Look around you. Our world has become a symphony of self-promotion, a constant battle for attention where being the loudest in the room is often mistaken for being the most powerful. We curate our lives for social media, amplify our opinions, and measure our worth in likes and shares, believing that to be seen is to be significant. But what if this entire frantic effort is based on a profound misunderstanding of where true power actually resides? What if the most commanding presence in any room isn't the one making the most noise, but the one who possesses an unshakable quiet, a stillness that speaks volumes without uttering a single word? This is the forgotten secret the ancient Stoics mastered, a path to a personality that simply cannot be ignored, even in complete silence. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his private meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He spoke of building an inner citadel, a fortress of character so resilient that the chaos of the external world could not penetrate it. This is the antithesis of our modern obsession. True presence, the kind that draws respect and commands attention, doesn't come from a clever tweet or a dominant voice. It emanates from a deep, unwavering foundation of internal virtues. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows who they are, what they stand for, and is utterly unconcerned with proving it to anyone else. This is not about being antisocial or withdrawn. It is about being so complete within yourself that your very being becomes a statement. In this video, we will journey beyond the surface-level tactics and explore the specific, time-tested Stoic principles for cultivating this undeniable presence. We will dismantle the myth that you need to be extroverted or loud to be influential. Instead, we will explore how to build a foundation of inner sovereignty, master your emotional responses, and embody a gravitas that makes people lean in when you walk into a room. We will uncover the art of intentional silence, the power of a calm demeanor, and the discipline of aligning your actions with a personal code of virtue. This is not about learning a trick, it is about undertaking a transformation. It is about designing a personality rooted not in fleeting trends, but in timeless wisdom, so that your quietest moments become your most powerful. Before you can project strength, you must first possess it utterly within. This is the non-negotiable starting point, the very bedrock of a personality that commands respect without a word. The Stoics called this the foundation of inner sovereignty, and it all begins with a simple but life-altering distinction known as the Dichotomy of Control. Imagine drawing a circle around everything that is truly, unequivocally yours. What falls inside, it is not your reputation, your wealth, your health, or what other people say about you. Those things exist outside the circle, in the domain of external events and other people's judgments. Inside your circle, the only things you have complete command over are your own judgments, your values, your desires, your aversions, and the actions you choose to take. This is your kingdom. This is where your true power resides. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, born a slave, understood this principle with profound clarity. He famously said, "Some things are up to us and some things are not up to us." He goes on to list what is up to us: our opinions, impulses, desires, and aversions. Everything else, our body, our property, our reputation, our public office, he classifies as not being up to us. This isn't a philosophy of passivity, it is a philosophy of intense focus. The immense freedom Epictetus promises comes from pouring all of your energy into managing what is inside your circle and releasing your desperate grip on everything outside of it. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you stop being a puppet whose strings are pulled by every shift in fortune and every critical comment. You become the puppeteer of your own inner world. Consider the power of this in a practical, everyday scenario. Imagine two colleagues receiving the same piece of harsh, perhaps even unfair, criticism from their manager. The first person, whose sense of self-worth is tied to external approval, is immediately rattled. Their heart races, their face flushes. They spend the rest of the day anxious and defensive, obsessing over the comment, maybe complaining to coworkers, their entire emotional state hijacked by someone else's opinion. Their presence becomes fragile, easily ignored because it is so reactive. Now, picture the second person who practices this inner sovereignty. They hear the same words, but they first run it through the filter of the dichotomy of control. Is this criticism within my power? No. The manager's opinion is their own, but my response, my choice to listen for a kernel of truth, my decision not to take it personally, my resolve to improve if warranted, that is 100% up to me. This person remains composed. They might nod, thank the manager for the feedback, and continue with their work with undiminished focus. Their silent presence in that moment is formidable because it is self-contained. They are not seeking validation. They are operating from a place of unshakable internal authority. This shift transforms you from being at the effect of the world to being the cause in your own life. When you are not constantly looking outside for cues on how to feel or act, you stop giving away your power. You become a source of stability rather than a seeker of it. People are instinctively drawn to this quality because it is rare and reliable. They sense a person who cannot be easily manipulated by praise or crushed by blame, a person whose value is determined from within. This inner sovereignty is the quiet engine that generates an unignorable presence. It's what allows you to walk into a room and, without saying a thing, communicate that you are the one who defines your own worth. To start building this foundation, I want you to think about one specific area of your life where you frequently find yourself giving your power away by reacting to external events. Is it in traffic, letting another driver's actions ruin your mood? Is it refreshing a social media post, anxiously waiting for likes? Identify that one area, because recognizing where your circle ends is the first step toward fortifying what lies within. What if the key to being noticed wasn't about feeling more, but about being mastered by less? This leads us directly to the second pillar of a powerful silent presence, the Stoic concept of apatheia. Now, it is crucial to understand that apatheia is not the same as the modern word apathy, which implies a cold, uncaring indifference to the world. The Stoic ideal is something far more profound and empowering. Apatheia is the state of being free from the destructive, irrational passions that hijack our reason and cloud our judgment. It is the cultivated ability to experience emotions without being enslaved by them, to feel the sting of pain or the flush of anger without letting those feelings dictate your actions. This creates an unshakable calm center, an emotional resilience that makes a person steady, reliable, and deeply grounded. Think of it like the difference between a calm, deep ocean and a turbulent, choppy lake. The lake is easily disturbed by every passing wind, its surface reflecting chaos. The ocean, however, possesses a profound depth that allows it to absorb disturbances without losing its essential, powerful calm. A person who has cultivated apatheia is like that ocean. They are not emotionless robots. They feel joy, sorrow, and concern, but these emotions do not control them. They process events rationally, which makes them predictable in the best possible way, predictably composed, predictably clear-headed. This consistency is magnetic. In a world of emotional volatility, where people are constantly overreacting to minor setbacks, the person who remains steady becomes a pillar that others instinctively lean on and respect. The Roman philosopher Seneca explored this idea extensively in his work on the happy life. He wrote that the ideal sage, the person who has achieved wisdom, is unshaken and undisturbed. Seneca describes this state not as a lack of feeling, but as a triumph of judgment over impulse. He argues that the sage feels distress, but does not consent to it. They experience pain, but their highest faculty, their reason, remains in command. This is the essence of apatheia. It is the victory of your conscious, rational mind over the automatic, often irrational, surges of emotion. It is the space you create between a triggering event and your response, a space where you can choose how to act rather than simply react. Let's bring this to life with a powerful, relatable example. Imagine two people receiving the same piece of devastating, unexpected news, perhaps a sudden and significant financial loss. The first person, who lacks this emotional discipline, is immediately consumed by the event. Panic sets in. They might spiral into despair, lash out in anger at those around them, or become paralyzed by anxiety. Their entire world seems to collapse in an instant because their emotional state is entirely dependent on this external circumstance. Their presence becomes frantic and fragile. Now picture the second person, who has practiced cultivating apatheia. They receive the same news. The initial shock hits them, the same physiological jolt of adrenaline. But then their training kicks in. They pause. They acknowledge the gravity of the situation and the natural feelings of fear, but they do not allow those feelings to take the driver's seat. They consciously turn to their reason. This has happened. It is outside my control now. What is within my control? My next steps. I can assess the damage calmly, explore my options, and make a rational plan. This person does not collapse. They process the event without being broken by it. Their silent demeanor in that moment of crisis communicates an incredible strength. They are not ignoring the problem. They are facing it with a clarity and composure that commands immense respect. This emotional mastery is what prevents you from being emotionally manipulated or thrown off balance by the dramas of daily life. When you are not constantly riding a roller coaster of highs and lows, your energy becomes focused and potent. People sense this stability. They know that you won't fly off the handle over a minor inconvenience or be crushed by a piece of criticism. This reliability makes your presence feel safe and substantial, and a substantial presence is one that is impossible to ignore. To connect this to your own life, take a moment to recall a recent situation where you felt hijacked by a strong emotion. Maybe it was a flash of road rage, a wave of jealousy, or a spike of anxiety before a meeting. Now reimagine that moment through the lens of apatheia. How would it have felt to acknowledge that emotion without letting it dictate your behavior? What different action could you have taken from that place of calm center? Recognizing this gap is the first step toward building your own emotional resilience. In a world addicted to noise, the most powerful statement is often a deliberate silence. We have been conditioned to believe that to be heard, we must speak, that to be understood, we must explain ourselves endlessly. But the Stoics saw this constant chatter as a sign of a disordered mind, a leakage of energy and a surrender of control. They practiced the art of intentional silence, not as a withdrawal from the world, but as a strategic tool for observation, strength, and cultivating an aura of mystery that naturally draws people in. When you choose to listen more than you speak, you shift from being a performer to being an observer. You grant yourself the gift of information. You learn about the people around you, their true intentions, their unspoken fears, their patterns of logic. This position of quiet observation is one of immense power, because the person who understands the room holds more influence than the person who is merely trying to dominate it. The founder of Stoicism, Zeno of Citium, wisely noted, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen more than we speak." This simple anatomical observation contains a profound philosophical truth. The Roman statesman Seneca echoed this sentiment, warning extensively about the dangers of careless speech in his letters. He argued that while a word spoken can never be taken back, a word unspoken remains entirely under your control. For the Stoics, silence was a discipline of temperance, a way to conserve your inner resources and ensure that when you did choose to break your silence, your words would carry weight and purpose. It is in the quiet spaces that we process, that we think, that we formulate responses rather than reactions. This practice of restraint builds a reservoir of perceived depth. People begin to assume there is more to you than meets the eye, simply because you haven't felt the need to show all your cards. Consider the dynamics of a high-stakes negotiation or a tense conflict. The common instinct is to fill the air with justifications, defenses, and counter-arguments. But imagine applying the Stoic art of intentional silence. One party makes an aggressive offer or a cutting remark. Instead of immediately firing back, you simply pause. You maintain comfortable eye contact, you breathe, and you allow the silence to hang in the air for a few moments longer than feels natural. What happens? The other person, uncomfortable with the void they perceive, will often feel compelled to fill it. They might start talking again, nervously elaborating, perhaps even weakening their own position by revealing more information than they intended, or by making a concession just to break the tension. In that silence, you haven't conceded anything. You force them to negotiate with themselves. Your quiet composure becomes more intimidating and commanding than any outburst could ever be, because it signals absolute self-control and confidence. This principle applies just as powerfully in everyday conversations. How often have you been in a discussion and felt an anxious urge to jump in the moment there was a pause, to immediately agree or disagree, to share a similar story of your own? This compulsion to fill silence often comes from a place of insecurity, a fear of being perceived as dull or uninformed. But when you resist that urge, when you allow a conversational lull to exist without panic, something remarkable occurs. The silence itself becomes a canvas for thought. It gives weight to what was just said and creates anticipation for what will be said next. Your eventual contribution, when it comes, will be more considered and therefore more impactful. It shifts the dynamic from a frantic exchange of words to a meaningful exchange of ideas. Think back to a recent conversation where you felt that internal pressure to speak unnecessarily. What might have unfolded differently if you had held your silence? Perhaps you would have gained a deeper insight, or perhaps the other person would have shared something more vulnerable. The art lies in becoming comfortable with the quiet, in understanding that your presence alone can be a complete and powerful response. People are drawn to those who seem to be guided by an internal compass, not external trends. This magnetic pull is the direct result of a quality the Romans called gravitas, a word that conveys weightiness, substance, and a profound seriousness of purpose. In our modern context, gravitas is that almost tangible sense of depth and authenticity that makes a person's presence feel significant and reliable. It has nothing to do with being somber or overly serious in a joyless way. Rather, it is the natural projection of someone whose life is aligned with a deeper conviction. When you know what you stand for and your actions consistently reflect those core beliefs, you carry yourself with a certainty that is both calming and compelling. This is gravitas in action, and it is a cornerstone of the Stoic personality. The Stoics saw this quality as the outward expression of living in accordance with nature and reason, which for them meant living a life of virtue. When your choices are guided by the principles of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, you are no longer swayed by every passing opinion or desperate for external validation. Your sense of direction comes from within. This internal alignment creates an aura of integrity that people can feel. It's the difference between a ship tossed by every wave and a deep sea vessel steadily moving toward its destination. The ship on the surface is reactive and unstable, while the vessel beneath is purposeful and unwavering. A person with gravitas is that deep sea vessel. Their course is true, and their progress is steady, regardless of the turbulence on the surface. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this need for purposeful action in his private writings. In his meditations, he instructs himself to approach every task, no matter how small, with full intention. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This is not a morbid fixation on death, but a powerful tool for injecting immediate purpose into the present moment. If this were your last act, how would you perform it? With distraction and half-hearted effort, or with full focus and integrity? Embodying gravitas means treating every interaction, every decision, and every challenge as if it matters because, guided by virtue, it truly does. This mindset infuses your demeanor with a quiet intensity that signals to others that you are fully present and that your engagement is meaningful. We can see a powerful historical example of this in the figure of Cato the Younger, a Roman senator whose life became a legend of Stoic principle. Cato was not a man of great speeches or flamboyant gestures. His power lay in his unwavering consistency. His contemporaries knew with absolute certainty what Cato stood for. He voted according to his conscience, even when it meant standing alone against the entire Senate. He lived a simple, austere life despite his wealth, because it aligned with his values. His commitment to the Roman Republic was so profound that when it fell to the dictatorship of Julius Caesar, Cato chose to take his own life rather than live under a tyranny he believed was unjust. What is most striking is the respect he commanded from even his fiercest enemies. Caesar himself, who had every reason to despise Cato, reportedly expressed frustration after Cato's death, lamenting that he had been robbed of the opportunity to grant him mercy. Cato's gravitas was so immense that his very existence was a silent, unignorable rebuke to corruption and compromise. People were drawn to him not because he sought their approval, but because his unwavering character was a rare and formidable force. This principle translates directly into our own lives, far from the senates of ancient Rome. Think about the people you respect most in your own world: a trusted mentor, a dedicated community leader, or even a family member. Chances are the respect you hold for them is rooted in their consistent character. They are the ones who keep their promises, who stand up for what is right even when it is difficult, and who seem to operate from a place of deep-seated values rather than fleeting impulses. Their quiet authority doesn't come from a title or a loud voice. It comes from the gravitational pull of their integrity. In a business meeting, the person who speaks less but whose words are always thoughtful and backed by action often holds more sway than the most charismatic talker. In a family crisis, the relative who remains calm and principled becomes the natural anchor for everyone else. This is gravitas at work, a silent communication of reliability that builds trust and commands attention effortlessly. Cultivating this quality begins with a simple but profound act of self-inquiry. It requires moving beyond the noise of external expectations and asking yourself what truly matters to you at the most fundamental level. What principle do you want to define your life? Is it courage, the willingness to face fears in pursuit of growth? Is it justice, a commitment to fairness and contributing to the well-being of others? Is it wisdom, the relentless pursuit of understanding? Or perhaps it is a blend of these virtues that forms your unique moral compass. The key is to define it clearly for yourself. When you have that internal North Star, your actions naturally begin to align with it. You start making choices that are congruent with your purpose, and with each congruent choice, your gravitas grows. You become less interested in appearing a certain way and more focused on being a certain way. This internal shift is what the world eventually sees as an unshakable and magnetic presence. So take a moment to look inward. What is the single core purpose or principle that, if you embodied it more fully starting today, would most profoundly shape the weight and substance of your character? Your body speaks before you do. What is your posture saying about your state of mind? While we have been exploring the internal fortress of Stoic thought, it is crucial to understand that this inner work is meant to manifest outwardly. A disciplined mind naturally seeks to bring order to the body that houses it, and this is where the power of a calm demeanor becomes undeniable. The Stoics were not merely armchair philosophers. They believed that philosophy was a complete way of life, and that included the physical vessel. A restless, fidgeting body betrays a restless, untrained mind. Conversely, a posture of stillness, measured movements, and a calm facial expression are the silent broadcast of the inner sovereignty and apatheia we have been building. They are the physical evidence of the inner citadel. The Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus placed a significant emphasis on this mind-body connection, arguing that physical training was an indispensable part of philosophy. He taught that just as we must exercise our reason, we must also train our bodies to endure hardship and to express the composure of our character. For Rufus, this wasn't about achieving a sculpted physique for vanity, but about forging a body that was a willing and capable servant to a rational mind. A body that is weak, sluggish, or easily agitated becomes an obstacle to virtue. It can amplify fear, fuel irritability, and make it difficult to act with courage and justice when the situation demands it. Therefore, cultivating a calm demeanor is a form of practical training for the challenges of life. It is the practice of ensuring your external presentation is in harmony with your internal state, creating a unified and potent presence. Consider the palpable difference in a high-pressure environment, like a critical business meeting where tensions are running high. In one corner, you have an individual whose anxiety is written all over their body. They might be tapping their pen incessantly, shifting in their chair, crossing and uncrossing their arms, their eyes darting around the room. Their speech might be rushed, their reactions sharp and defensive. Regardless of what they are actually saying, their body is screaming a message of insecurity and lack of control. They are easy to rattle, and their reactive energy can actually escalate the tension in the room. Now observe another person in that same meeting. They are seated with a straight but relaxed posture. Their hands are still, perhaps resting calmly on the table. Their breathing is even. They maintain steady eye contact when listening, and when they speak, their words are delivered at a measured pace. They are not rigid or frozen. There is a fluidity to their stillness that suggests readiness, not paralysis. This person's calm demeanor does two powerful things. First, it signals to everyone else that they are in command of themselves, which immediately inspires a degree of confidence and respect. Second, and perhaps more importantly, it actively reduces their own susceptibility to provocation. By consciously maintaining a calm exterior, you send a feedback loop to your own brain, reinforcing the message that there is no emergency, that you are safe and in control. It becomes much harder for a panic response to take hold when your body is not cooperating with the chaos. This practice extends far beyond the boardroom. Think about standing in a long, frustrating line or being stuck in traffic. The natural, untrained response is to sigh heavily, shift your weight impatiently, clench your jaw, or glare at the people around you. These physical manifestations of irritation do nothing to speed up the situation. They only serve to amplify your own stress and broadcast your agitation to the world. Now apply the Stoic discipline. You notice the delay, you acknowledge the inconvenience, but you then make a conscious choice about your physical response. You deliberately relax your shoulders, you soften your gaze, you take a slow, deep breath. You decide to use the unexpected pause as a moment of quiet observation or reflection. This small act of physical control is a profound exercise in virtue. It is the practice of temperance, moderating your impulses. It is an act of courage facing an annoyance with equanimity. Your calm demeanor in that mundane moment is a silent victory for your character, and it makes your presence, even in a crowd of frustrated people, noticeably different and grounded. The goal is not to become a statue devoid of all natural expression. It is to eliminate the involuntary, reactive twitches and postures that betray a lack of inner discipline. It is to ensure that your body's language is a conscious choice, an ally to your mind, rather than a traitor that reveals every passing fear or frustration. This conscious control over your physical presence is a powerful tool for shaping how you are perceived and, more importantly, how you experience the world. It makes you harder to read for those who might wish to manipulate you, and it makes you a source of stability for those who are feeling unmoored. To begin integrating this, I want you to become a detective of your own physical habits for just one day. Notice what your body does when you feel a spike of anxiety or impatience. Do you hunch your shoulders? Do you start to pace? Do you clench your fists? Simply observing this is the first step. Then choose one small, deliberate change. Perhaps it is the conscious act of squaring your shoulders and lifting your chin when you feel stress. Or maybe it is the practice of keeping your hands still instead of fidgeting with your phone. This is not about a major overhaul. It is about a single, intentional adjustment that begins to align your outer calm with your inner strength. What is the conversation you're having with yourself when no one else is listening? This private dialogue, the constant stream of thoughts and judgments running through your mind, is arguably the most important conversation of your life. It is the foundation upon which your confidence is built, and it directly shapes the energy you project into the world. If that inner voice is a harsh critic, full of doubt and irrational fears, it will inevitably leak out as insecurity, making your presence feel tentative and easily dismissed. But if you can master this inner dialogue, transforming it into a voice of rational support, you cultivate an unshakable self-assurance that others can feel even before you speak. This is the next frontier of Stoic practice, becoming the guardian of your own mind. The core of this practice rests on a fundamental Stoic principle, perfectly articulated by Epictetus. People are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. Let that sink in for a moment. It is not the event itself that causes your anxiety or undermines your confidence. It is the story you tell yourself about the event. Your inner dialogue is the author of that story. When you face a challenge, your untrained mind might immediately whisper, "This is too hard, you're going to fail, everyone will see you're not good enough." That narrative, that judgment, is what creates the disturbance. It is a cognitive event, and the Stoics empower us with the incredible realization that we have the ability to question, challenge, and rewrite that narrative. We are not passive recipients of our thoughts. We can become active editors of our inner script. This is where we move from theory to life-changing application. Consider a common experience. You give a presentation at work, and it doesn't go as well as you had hoped. Perhaps you stumbled over a few points, or a key point didn't land with the audience. The automatic, untrained inner dialogue might sound like this: "I am a terrible public speaker. I completely failed. They all think I'm incompetent." This is a classic example of what cognitive psychologists call catastrophizing and overgeneralization, taking a single event and turning it into a global, self-defining failure. This kind of self-talk doesn't just feel bad, it actively erodes your confidence, making you hesitant to step up the next time an opportunity arises. Your external presence becomes smaller, more apologetic, as you internalize this story of inadequacy. Now, let's apply the Stoic discipline of mastering the inner dialogue. After the same presentation, you notice the negative thought arising, but instead of accepting it as truth, you pause, you become the editor. You challenge the initial impression with rationality. You might reframe the dialogue to something like, "Okay, that presentation had some rough spots. I learned that I need to practice the second section more thoroughly." The third point, however, was well received. This was not a total failure. It was a learning experience that showed me what to improve for next time. Do you feel the seismic shift in energy between those two internal conversations? The first one is a judgment that attacks your character. The second is an objective assessment that focuses on specific, improvable actions. The first leaves you defeated, the second leaves you empowered. A person who consistently engages in the second kind of self-talk is building a reservoir of quiet confidence. They know that setbacks are data, not definitions. This internal resilience translates directly into a more grounded and compelling external presence. People sense that this person is not easily rattled by criticism or failure because their sense of self-worth is not tied to a single outcome. The goal is not to become blindly optimistic or to suppress negative feelings. Stoicism is about pursuing truth. The rational reframe is often the more accurate and truthful perspective. It is far more truthful to say, "I made a mistake in this instance," than to declare, "I am a failure." This practice of monitoring and redirecting your self-talk is a daily exercise in building mental fortitude. It is like strengthening a muscle. Each time you catch a negative, irrational thought and consciously replace it with a balanced, rational one, you are fortifying your inner citadel. You are training yourself to respond to life's events with wisdom rather than with panic. This inner stability becomes your most valuable asset. When you walk into a room, you are not carrying the weight of 100 self-inflicted criticisms. You are carrying the quiet assurance of someone who knows how to be their own ally. The conversation in your head is no longer a source of sabotage but a wellspring of strength. To start building this muscle today, I challenge you to do this simple exercise. Catch just one negative self-judgment when it pops into your mind. It might be about your appearance, your performance at a task, or a social interaction. The moment you notice it, stop, then consciously reframe it. Turn "I'm so awkward" into "that interaction was a bit clumsy, but it's okay. I'll be more mindful next time." This small act of mental discipline is a profound step toward mastering your inner world and, by extension, commanding the room with your silent, self-assured presence. Between a stimulus and your response, there is a gap. Mastering that gap is the discipline of assent. This is perhaps one of the most practical and immediately applicable tools in the entire Stoic toolkit, a mental mechanism that grants you the power to intercept your automatic reactions before they hijack your behavior. Think of your mind as a fortress gate. An impression, a thought, a feeling, a perception arrives at the gate like a messenger. The undisciplined mind flings the gate open immediately, accepting the messenger's report as absolute truth without question. This is how we find ourselves instantly angry at a comment, deeply wounded by a glance, or paralyzed by a fear, all based on a single, unverified impression. The discipline of assent is the trained guard at the gate who stops the messenger and says, "Wait. Let me examine your message before I let it in." This simple pause, this moment of examination, is what separates a reactive life from a responsive one, and it is the source of incredible mental poise. Epictetus laid out this process with brilliant clarity. He instructed his students, Don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say to it, hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent. Let me put you to the test. He wasn't suggesting we become coldly analytical robots, disconnected from our feelings. He was teaching us to become wise judges of the information our senses and emotions provide. An impression is just an initial data point, often raw and unfiltered. It might be accurate, it might be distorted by our past experiences, or it might be a complete misinterpretation. The discipline of assent is the practice of not granting automatic approval to that data point. It is the space where you ask, is this impression true? Is it helpful? Is it within my control? This interrogation creates a buffer zone between the outside world and your inner peace, a zone where you retain sovereignty. Consider the modern-day equivalent of a Stoic test, receiving a provocative email. It lands in your inbox, and the subject line alone makes your heart sink. You open it to find a message from a colleague that feels accusatory, unfairly critical, or downright hostile. The initial impression hits with the force of a physical blow. Your body tenses, your face flushes, and a wave of anger or defensiveness washes over you. The untrained, automatic response is to fire back immediately. Your fingers fly across the keyboard, crafting a sharp, defensive, or equally hostile reply. You hit send with a satisfying click, only to spend the next hour, or the rest of the day, in a state of agitated regret, replaying the exchange in your mind and damaging a professional relationship. Now, let's replay that scenario with the discipline of assent activated. The same email arrives. The same initial impression of anger and defensiveness arises. This is natural and unavoidable. But instead of that impression immediately triggering the action of replying, you invoke the pause. You recognize the impression for what it is, a raw, emotional reaction. You close the email. You might even get up and walk away from your desk for 5 minutes. You take a few deep breaths, allowing the physiological reaction to subside. In that space, you begin to examine the impression. You ask Epictetus's questions. Hold on a moment. Is this email truly a personal attack? Could I be misinterpreting the tone? Is the sender under stress themselves? Is there a tiny kernel of valid feedback buried in the harsh delivery? By subjecting the impression to this rational examination, you strip it of its explosive power. You might decide that a response is necessary, but now it will be a measured, professional one, perhaps even a clarifying question rather than a counterattack. You might write, "Thank you for your feedback. To ensure I understand correctly, could you provide more context on point A?" This response, born from assent, de-escalates the situation and demonstrates a level of self-control that commands respect. The person who can pause in the face of provocation projects a wisdom and stability that is far more powerful than any heated retort. This practice extends far beyond email. It applies to the impression of fear before a big presentation, the impression of envy when a friend shares good news, or the impression of frustration when stuck in traffic. In each case, the initial impression is not the problem. The problem is our automatic assent to it, our unquestioning belief that it represents reality. When you master the gap, you reclaim your freedom. You are no longer a puppet whose strings are pulled by every external event and internal whim. You become the author of your responses. This cultivated poise is unmistakable to others. It manifests as a thoughtful slowness to judgment, a calmness under pressure, and a reliability that people come to trust deeply. Your presence becomes a calming influence because you are not adding reactive energy to chaotic situations. To start building this discipline today, take a moment to look inward and identify one common first impression you have that frequently leads you astray. Is it the immediate assumption that someone is criticizing you, the instant feeling of inadequacy when you see someone else's success? Pinpoint that automatic thought. Simply by naming it, you have taken the first step toward becoming the guard at your own gate, empowered to choose your response with wisdom and intention. A personality that can't be ignored is built on a foundation of non-negotiable principles. We have explored the inner disciplines of thought and emotion, but these practices must be anchored to something solid, something that gives them direction and purpose. That anchor is a personal code of virtue, a clearly defined set of moral guidelines that acts as the backbone of your character. This isn't about a list of rigid rules imposed from the outside. It is about an internally held compass, built on timeless principles that guide your every action. When you live by such a code, you achieve a level of consistency that makes you deeply trustworthy and reliable. People know with certainty what you stand for. They know your yes means yes and your no means no. This predictability in character, born of integrity, is what makes your silent presence carry immense weight. You don't need to announce your values. Your actions announce them for you in a way that is far more eloquent than any speech. The Stoics provided a powerful framework for building this code through what they called the four cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Think of these not as separate items to check off a list, but as interconnected qualities that form a complete and excellent character. Wisdom, or prudence, is the virtue of practical judgment. It is the ability to see the world clearly, to discern what is truly good and bad, and to choose the right action in complex situations. Courage is not just physical bravery, but the moral courage to stand up for what is right, even when it is difficult, unpopular, or frightening. It is the strength to endure hardship and face uncertainty without being swayed from your path. Justice is the commitment to fairness, kindness, and working for the common good. It is about recognizing our fundamental connection to others and acting with a sense of duty and reciprocity. Finally, temperance is the virtue of self-discipline and moderation. It is the mastery over our desires and impulses, ensuring that we use the things of the world without being enslaved by them. When these four virtues work in harmony, they create a person of profound balance and strength. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, constantly returned to the supreme importance of virtue as the only true good. He wrote to himself, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be." B1. This is the ultimate Stoic imperative, to move from philosophical debate to lived action. For Aurelius, a life of virtue was a life lived in accordance with nature and reason, which is the highest purpose of a human being. He saw everything else, wealth, reputation, health, even life itself, as indifference. They are preferred or dispreferred, but they are not good or bad in themselves. Their value depends entirely on how they are used. Virtue, however, is the only unconditional good. This perspective is incredibly liberating. It means that your worth and your character are not dependent on external circumstances. You can practice courage whether you are rich or poor. You can exercise justice whether you are famous or unknown. Your ability to live a good life is always within your power because it hinges on your choices, not your conditions. Let's bring this to life with a clear, modern example. Imagine a mid-level executive in a competitive corporation. She is presented with an opportunity that would guarantee a significant promotion and a massive bonus. The catch is that the opportunity requires her to approve a project that she knows involves misleading marketing claims, potentially harming vulnerable customers. The easy, common path would be to rationalize the decision. She might tell herself, "Everyone does it," or "It's not technically illegal," or "I need to provide for my family." But this executive has taken the time to define her personal code. For her, justice and temperance are non-negotiable. Justice demands she considers the well-being of those who would be affected. Temperance gives her the discipline to resist the lure of the bonus, recognizing that such wealth gained unethically would ultimately corrupt her character. So she quietly turns down the opportunity. She doesn't make a grand public statement. She simply provides her reasoned objection to her superior and declines to be involved. The immediate consequence might be a missed promotion, and some colleagues might even see her as naive, but the long-term consequence is the solidification of her character. The people who matter, those with their own moral compass, will recognize the immense strength in her decision. Her silent refusal speaks louder than any boastful claim of integrity. She becomes known as someone with a backbone, someone who can be trusted when the stakes are high. That reputation, built on a foundation of virtue, is an unignorable asset. This is the power that becomes available to you when you move from a vague sense of right and wrong to a consciously chosen code. It transforms moral dilemmas from paralyzing conflicts into clear choices. The question is no longer, what is the easiest path, or what will people think? The question becomes, what action aligns with my virtues? This reframing simplifies decision-making and infuses your life with a profound sense of purpose. You are no longer drifting with the current of social pressure or personal convenience. You are navigating by the stars of your principles. To begin building this foundation for yourself, I encourage you to take a simple but powerful step. Find a quiet moment and write down your own top 3 personal virtues. They may be the Stoic cardinal virtues, or they may be others that resonate deeply with you, such as honesty, compassion, or resilience. The specific words matter less than the conscious choice. Define what these virtues mean to you in practical terms. How would courage show up in your life this week? What would an act of justice look like in your community? By giving these principles a name and a definition, you move them from abstract ideas to active guides. You begin the process of building the unshakable backbone that supports a personality that truly cannot be ignored. What if regularly contemplating loss was the key to fearing it less? This sounds like a paradox, but it is the brilliant, counterintuitive heart of the next Stoic practice, known as Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. Far from being a pessimistic exercise in dwelling on the worst, this is a powerful psychological technique designed to inoculate you against the twin viruses of anxiety and attachment. The core idea is simple yet profound. By mentally rehearsing the loss of the things and people we cherish, we strip those potential losses of their power to shock and destabilize us. We move from a state of fearful clinging to a state of grateful, clear-eyed appreciation. A person who has genuinely made peace with the possibility of loss carries themselves with a unique and powerful freedom. They are not haunted by the what-ifs because they have already visited that territory in their mind and returned, unharmed and wiser. This freedom from dread translates into a presence that is calm, appreciative, and remarkably resilient. The Roman philosopher Seneca was a master of this practice, and he wrote about it extensively in his letters. He advised his friend Lucilius to live each day as if it were his last, but also to treat all his possessions as if they were on loan, destined to be reclaimed. In one of his most famous passages, he suggests that we should say to ourselves, "You have enjoyed all that this person, or this position, or this wealth had to offer. They were never yours to keep forever." This is not a statement of cold detachment, but one of profound gratitude. By acknowledging the temporary nature of everything, we are forced to appreciate its presence in our lives right now, in this moment. Seneca argues that the person who has mentally prepared for poverty is truly rich because they have already overcome the fear of being poor. Similarly, The person who has contemplated their own mortality is the one who knows how to truly live. This practice builds a kind of emotional callus, not to make us numb, but to allow us to walk through life without being so easily wounded by its inevitable hardships. Let's make this incredibly practical. Consider the pervasive anxiety many people feel in their careers, the constant, low-grade fear of losing their job. This fear can be debilitating. It can lead to unhealthy posturing, a reluctance to take necessary risks, and a desperate need for external validation from superiors. The energy spent on managing perceptions and protecting one's position is energy diverted from doing genuinely excellent work. Now, apply the practice of negative visualization. What if you set aside 5 minutes each week to consciously and calmly contemplate losing your job? You don't do this to scare yourself, but to prepare yourself. You walk through the scenario in your mind. You imagine the meeting, the news, the initial shock, but then you go further. You ask yourself the Stoic questions. What is within my control in this situation? My reaction, my ability to update my resume, my network of contacts, my capacity to learn new skills, my resilience. You visualize yourself navigating the aftermath with composure, taking rational steps, and even seeing it as an opportunity for a new beginning. By repeatedly visiting this scenario in the safety of your mind, you drain it of its terror. The potential event loses its power as a lurking monster. When you return to your desk after this mental rehearsal, your relationship with your job has shifted. You are no longer operating from a place of fear. You can now do your work with more authenticity and courage, not because your job is secure, but because you have already made peace with its potential loss. Your presence becomes that of someone who is there by choice and commitment, not out of desperate necessity. This practice extends to every area of life where attachment breeds anxiety. The fear of a loved one falling ill, the worry about a project failing, the anxiety over social rejection. All of these can be softened by the deliberate and rational premeditation of the very thing we fear. The goal is never to invite misfortune, but to recognize that much of our suffering comes from our resistance to the natural flow of life, which includes change and loss. When we stop resisting this fundamental truth, we stop wasting energy on futile attempts to build permanent fortresses in a world of shifting sands. Instead, we learn to dance gracefully with impermanence. This mindset fosters a deep and active appreciation for the present. The conversation with a friend becomes more precious when you consciously consider that it might be your last. The comfort of your home feels more welcoming when you acknowledge it is a temporary gift. This is the alchemy of negative visualization. It transforms potential future pain into present moment gratitude and strength. To begin integrating this powerful tool into your own life, I invite you to try a brief exercise right now. Bring to mind one common fear that occasionally troubles you. Perhaps it is the fear of an important plan falling through, or the fear of a minor public embarrassment. Close your eyes for just a moment and vividly imagine that fear coming to pass. Sit with the feeling. Then ask yourself, what is the worst-case outcome, and what would I still have control over? How could I respond with virtue, with courage, wisdom, or temperance? This small act of mental preparation is a profound step toward the fearless, appreciative presence that defines a character that cannot be ignored. The Stoics believed in speaking only when their words would be an improvement upon silence. This principle, which they called the economy of words, is a direct application of the virtues of wisdom and temperance. It's about recognizing that speech is a powerful resource, and like any valuable resource, it should be deployed with intention and conservation, not wasted frivolously. In an age where we are encouraged to have an opinion on everything and to share every passing thought, the discipline of speaking less is a radical act of reclaiming your power. When you are not constantly explaining yourself, justifying your actions, or seeking validation through chatter, you create a reservoir of quiet authority. The words you do choose to offer then emerge from that silence with immense weight and impact, because people have learned that when you speak, it is for a reason. Seneca, in his moral letters, drives this point home with characteristic force. He warns against the dangers of empty talk, advising, "Let your speech be both brief and infrequent." He wasn't advocating for muteness but for precision. He observed that those who talk too much often say very little of substance, and in the process, they reveal their own insecurities and a lack of inner depth. For Seneca, a wise person's words are measured and purposeful because they have been filtered through the sieve of reason. They have considered whether their contribution is necessary, true, and kind. This careful curation of speech is a form of self-respect. It communicates that your thoughts are valuable and that you do not need the constant approval of an audience to validate your existence. Your silence becomes a statement of self-containment. Consider the stark contrast in a typical workplace meeting. One participant feels compelled to speak on every single agenda item. They rephrase what others have already said, offer lengthy anecdotes that may not be entirely relevant, and fill every quiet moment with their voice. Initially, they may believe this makes them appear engaged and intelligent, but over time, a different impression forms. Colleagues might start to tune them out, anticipating that their contributions will often be redundant or lack focus. Their words, through sheer volume, begin to lose their value. They become background noise. Now, observe another individual in the same meeting. They spend most of the time listening intently, taking notes, and observing the dynamics of the room. They do not feel the pressure to perform or prove their worth with constant commentary. Then, when a critical point is being debated, or when a decision is at a stalemate, this person speaks. They offer a single, concise observation that cuts to the heart of the issue, synthesizing the previous discussion and proposing a clear path forward. The room falls silent. Everyone listens. Why? Because this person has established through their previous restraint that their words are not cheap. Each one has been earned. Their occasional speech carries an authority that the incessant talker can never achieve. This economy of words extends far beyond formal settings into our daily social interactions. How often do we feel a social obligation to fill a lull in conversation with small talk, even when we have nothing meaningful to add? Or how frequently do we offer unsolicited advice or opinions when a simple, attentive silence would have been a more supportive and powerful response? The discipline here is to resist the compulsive need to be heard and to instead embrace the power of active listening. When you truly listen, you grant the other person the gift of feeling understood. You also gather information and insight that allows you to respond with far greater wisdom and empathy when you do choose to speak. Your silence in these moments is not awkward, it is respectful and engaged. It makes the other person feel that their words are being valued, which in turn makes them more receptive to yours when you finally offer them. This practice is not about becoming withdrawn or secretive. It is about elevating the quality of your communication by drastically reducing the quantity of unnecessary noise. It is about ensuring that your verbal contributions are aligned with your virtues, that they are wise, courageous when necessary, just, and temperate. A person who masters the economy of words discovers that they exert more influence with a whisper than others do with a shout. Their presence becomes more focused and potent because their energy is not dissipated in a cloud of verbiage. To bring this concept into your own life, take a moment for a simple audit. Cast your mind back to your interactions yesterday. Can you identify one specific situation, a conversation, a meeting, even a text message chain, where you spoke or wrote something that was ultimately unnecessary? Perhaps it was an opinion that didn't need to be shared, a justification that wasn't required, or a comment made purely to fill a silence. Simply noticing that moment is the first step toward cultivating a more powerful and intentional voice. The Stoic Archer aims carefully but is detached from whether the arrow hits the target. This ancient analogy, recounted by philosophers like Cicero and Seneca, captures a profound shift in mindset that is essential for cultivating a presence free from desperation. The archer's entire focus is on what is within his control, choosing the right bow, nocking the arrow correctly, drawing the string with proper form, taking aim with a steady hand, and releasing at the perfect moment. He does all of this with skill and dedication, but once the arrow leaves the bowstring, its flight is subject to 1,000 factors outside his control: a sudden gust of wind, a shift in the light, the movement of the target. For the Stoic Archer to become emotionally attached to the outcome, to stake his entire sense of self-worth on that arrow hitting the bullseye, would be a form of self-sabotage. Success is defined not by the result but by the quality and virtue of the action itself. This philosophy of detachment is not about not caring or being passive. It is the ultimate expression of focusing your energy with laser-like precision. When you pour all of your effort into the process, the things you can actually influence, and release your anxious grip on the result, you remove a tremendous weight from your shoulders. Your demeanor transforms. The neediness that often accompanies a desperate desire for a specific outcome evaporates. You stop trying to control the uncontrollable, and in doing so, you stop being controlled by it. This creates an aura of equanimity, a calm focus that is incredibly compelling to witness. People sense that you are operating from a place of intrinsic motivation, driven by the standards you set for yourself rather than by a craving for external validation. This self-contained confidence is magnetic. Seneca beautifully articulated this principle when he wrote about the importance of willing the process as if it were the outcome. He advised that we should embrace our endeavors fully, but then accept whatever results with equal grace, understanding that the universe has its own logic that our limited perspective cannot always grasp. The virtuous effort is the true victory. The external reward is often just a fortunate bonus. This mindset is the antidote to the performance anxiety that plagues so many aspects of modern life. When you are no longer terrified of failure or desperately hungry for a specific win, you are free to perform at your absolute best. Your mind is clear, your actions are precise, and your presence is undisturbed by the chaos of chance. Consider the world of elite athletics, where the difference between victory and defeat can be a fraction of a second. An athlete who is solely focused on winning the gold medal carries an immense psychological burden. Every stumble in practice, every strong performance by a rival can trigger a wave of anxiety. During the race itself, their attention might be split between their own performance and the position of their competitors. This divided focus can lead to mistakes, tightening up under pressure, or a collapse if things don't go perfectly to plan. Now, imagine an athlete who has internalized the way of the Stoic Archer. Their goal is not the medal, their goal is to execute their race plan flawlessly. They focus on their breathing, their stride, their technique. They are fully immersed in the process, moment by moment. If another runner pulls ahead, they don't panic. They trust their training and stick to their strategy. Whether they win or lose, they can walk off the track with their head held high, knowing they left everything they had out there and performed to the best of their ability. Their equanimity in both victory and defeat is a testament to their inner strength, making their presence far more impressive than any trophy could. This principle applies with equal force to our own pursuits, whether it's a major project at work, an artistic endeavor, or even building a relationship. When you become overly attached to a promotion, to your book becoming a bestseller, or to a person reacting to you in a certain way, you introduce a note of desperation that can be sensed by others, and that clouds your own judgment. You might compromise your integrity to secure the outcome, or you might become so fearful of failure that you avoid taking necessary risks. But when you shift your focus to the quality of your effort, to doing your work with excellence, to writing with honesty, to interacting with kindness and authenticity, you reclaim your power. The outcome becomes a data point for learning, not a verdict on your worth. To integrate this powerful shift, take a moment to identify one important goal you are currently working towards. Now ask yourself, can I temporarily set aside the obsession with the final result? What would it look like to pour all of my attention into the quality of my actions today? What single step can I take with complete focus and integrity, regardless of what may or may not happen tomorrow? This simple reframe is the first step toward the unshakable poise of the archer, whose power lies not in the arrow's destination, but in the mastery of the shot. What if seeking small discomforts was the training for facing large ones with grace? This question lies at the heart of a profoundly practical Stoic exercise known as the practice of voluntary discomfort. At first glance, deliberately choosing to be cold, hungry, or tired when warmth, satiety, and rest are readily available seems counterintuitive, even masochistic. But the Stoic purpose is far more strategic and empowering. This is not about punishing the body, it is about training the mind. It is a form of psychological vaccination, where you expose yourself to a small, controlled dose of hardship to build up your immunity to the fear and disruption that major, unexpected hardships can bring. By regularly stepping outside the cocoon of constant comfort, you forge a will that is flexible and resilient, and this inner toughness inevitably projects outward, making you appear more capable and unshakable to those around you. The Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus was a strong advocate for this kind of rigorous training. He argued that just as an athlete must train their body for competition, a philosopher must train their soul for life. He saw luxury and excessive comfort as enemies of virtue because they soften the spirit and create dependency. Musonius taught that practicing poverty, hardship, and discomfort voluntarily makes the actual experience of them involuntary far less terrifying. He believed that a person who is accustomed to simple food will not be thrown into despair by a sudden change in fortune, and a person who has endured cold will not be broken by a change in the weather. This practice is a direct assault on the sense of entitlement that modern comfort can breed, the unconscious belief that we deserve to be comfortable at all times. When you dismantle that belief through action, you reclaim a tremendous amount of personal freedom. Seneca, too, championed this idea, often prescribing periods of simple living even amidst his own wealth. He advised setting aside a few days each month to wear simple clothes, eat plain food, and sleep on a hard bed. His reasoning was brilliant. We must become familiar with what we fear. By voluntarily experiencing what we typically avoid, we rob it of its power. The goal, he explained, is not to live in perpetual hardship, but to know with absolute certainty that you can. This knowledge is the source of a deep, quiet confidence. When you know you can handle discomfort, you stop fearing it. And a person who is not afraid of discomfort is incredibly difficult to manipulate or intimidate. They can walk away from unfavorable deals, endure necessary short-term pain for long-term gain, and remain calm in situations that would cause others to panic. Let's bring this down to a simple, everyday level. Imagine it's a crisp, cold morning. You need to go to the corner store for a carton of milk. The easy, automatic choice is to get in your warm car, drive the 3 blocks, and return to your cozy home with minimal exposure to the elements. But today, you decide to practice voluntary discomfort. You leave the car keys on the hook, you put on a jacket and choose to walk. As you step outside, the cold air hits your face. Your initial instinct might be to tense up, to hurry, to resent the chill, but instead you lean into the sensation. You pay attention to your breathing. You notice the clarity of the cold air in your lungs. You observe the world around you, which you would have missed from behind a windshield. The discomfort is real, but it is manageable. With each step, you are not just walking to the store, you are sending a powerful message to your subconscious mind. I am stronger than my desire for comfort. I can handle this. This small act, repeated over time, builds a cumulative resilience. When a real hardship strikes, a stressful work deadline, a personal conflict, a financial setback, your mind has a reference point. It can recall, I have endured discomfort before by choice. I can certainly endure this necessary challenge. Your response will be calmer, more measured, and more capable. This practice of embracing minor hardships is the polar opposite of the modern pursuit of a frictionless existence. We seek climate control, instant delivery, and endless entertainment, insulating ourselves from even the slightest inconvenience. Yet, this very insulation can make us brittle. When the power goes out, when a flight is cancelled, when we face a situation that can't be solved with a tap on a screen, we risk a meltdown because our tolerance for frustration has been systematically lowered. The Stoic practice of voluntary discomfort is the antidote. It is the conscious decision to reintroduce a healthy amount of friction into your life to keep your resilience muscles strong. It's the mental equivalent of lifting weights. You wouldn't expect to lift a heavy object in an emergency if you never trained your muscles. Similarly, you cannot expect to handle a heavy emotional or psychological burden if you never train your will. The beauty of this practice is its accessibility. You don't need to embark on a wilderness survival expedition. You can start with micro-challenges woven into your existing routine. It could be taking a cold shower for the final 30 seconds of your morning routine. It could be choosing to drink water instead of a sugary soda with your lunch. It could be sitting in a quiet room for 5 minutes without any digital stimulation, embracing the minor discomfort of boredom. Each of these small acts is a rep in the gym of your character. They strengthen your ability to say no to immediate gratification in service of a larger goal. They build the mental fortitude that allows you to stay focused on a difficult task when you'd rather be distracted. This internal discipline manifests externally as a kind of grounded toughness. People sense that you are not someone who is easily knocked off course by minor annoyances. Your presence carries a weight of reliability because it is clear that you are in a conscious partnership with discomfort, not a fearful flight from it. To begin this training today, I challenge you to a simple task. Identify one small, voluntary discomfort you can incorporate into your week. It must be safe and manageable, but it should be something you would normally avoid. Perhaps it's that walk in the cold, or a meal of simple, unadorned food, or leaving your phone behind during a short errand. The specific action matters less than the intentionality behind it. Choose your discomfort, embrace it fully, and observe the subtle strengthening of your will that follows. A person who is complete within themselves does not seek completion from others. This state of inner wholeness, which the ancient Greeks called autarkeia, is the Stoic ideal of self-sufficiency, and it is perhaps the most magnetic quality a human being can possess. It is not about isolation or rugged individualism. It is about reaching a point of profound contentment with the resources of your own character, your own mind, and your own company. When you are the source of your own validation and satisfaction, a fundamental shift occurs in your interactions with the world. You stop needing things from people, their approval, their constant attention, their reassurance. This elimination of neediness is what allows your true personality to shine through, unburdened by the desperate energy of seeking. Your presence becomes a gift you offer freely, rather than a transaction where you are hoping to receive something in return. Epictetus, who began his life in slavery and therefore understood true freedom better than most, placed this concept at the very center of his philosophy. He taught that happiness and freedom are the results of correctly understanding what is truly yours and what is not. He argued that we become enslaved when we tie our well-being to external things, other people's opinions, social status, material possessions. But when we find our good within our own faculty of choice, our ability to reason and to act with virtue, we become truly free. He famously stated, "He is free who lives as he wishes, who is neither subject to compulsion nor hindrance nor force, whose choices are unhampered, whose desires attain their end, whose aversions do not fall into what they would avoid." This freedom is not granted by the world, it is cultivated within the mind. A person who has achieved this doesn't just say they are content. Their entire demeanor radiates a quiet, unshakable assurance that they are enough. Consider the stark contrast between two people at a social gathering. The first individual arrives with a subtle but palpable hunger. They circulate through the room, but their interactions are tinged with a need for validation. They laugh a little too loudly at jokes, they subtly steer conversations toward their own accomplishments, and they anxiously check their phone for messages, their mood fluctuating with every like or lack thereof. Their energy is scattered and seeking. While they may be friendly, there is an underlying tension, a need to be liked, to be seen as interesting, to feel included. This neediness, however subtle, can be sensed by others, often creating an unconscious pressure that pushes people away. Now, observe the second person. They may be standing alone for a moment, simply observing the room with a calm, appreciative gaze. They are not scanning for a more important person to talk to or looking uncomfortable in their own skin. When someone approaches them, they engage with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and listening deeply. Their laughter is authentic, not performative. They share stories not to impress but to connect. The key difference is that this person is not at the party to get anything. They are there to contribute, to enjoy, to connect, but their sense of self-worth is not on the line. They are perfectly content in their own company, so the company of others becomes a delightful addition, not a necessary validation. This self-contained energy is incredibly attractive. People are drawn to it because it feels safe and generous. There are no hidden agendas, no emotional demands. This person's interactions are a gift because they are offered from a place of abundance, not deficit. This principle of apatheia transforms your relationship with solitude as well. For many, being alone is synonymous with loneliness, a state to be avoided at all costs. For the self-sufficient individual, solitude is a cherished space for reflection, creativity, and recharge. It is not an empty void but a fertile ground for the self. Think of an artist who paints for the sheer joy of expression, not for the gallery opening, or a writer who finds deep satisfaction in the act of crafting sentences, regardless of whether the manuscript is ever published. Or simply a person who can spend a quiet Sunday afternoon reading a book, going for a walk, or puttering around their home, fully engaged and at peace. This ability to be happily alone is the ultimate evidence of self-sufficiency. It proves that your entertainment, your peace, and your value are generated from within. When you enter social situations from this foundation, You carry with you an aura of completeness that is both calming and compelling. You are not a half person looking for your other half. You are a whole person capable of creating meaningful wholes with others. Cultivating this begins not with acquiring more, but with fully appreciating what you already possess. It is a shift from a mindset of scarcity to one of profound abundance. The modern world constantly whispers that you are incomplete, that you need a newer car, a more glamorous vacation, a larger social media following to be whole. Autarkeia is the rebellious act of turning down that volume and listening to the quiet hum of your own sufficiency. To start this practice, take a moment for a simple but powerful exercise. Grab a pen and paper or simply pause and reflect mentally. I want you to list 3 things you already possess that bring you genuine, unshakable contentment. These are not things that can be taken away by external circumstances. They might be intangible, like your capacity for curiosity, your sense of humor, or your ability to feel compassion. They might be simple pleasures like the feeling of sunlight on your skin, the taste of your favorite meal, or the memory of a loved one's laughter. The act of consciously identifying these internal and enduring sources of joy is a direct rebellion against the culture of neediness. It is a declaration that you are, right here and right now, already equipped with everything required for a rich and meaningful life. This recognition is the first step toward projecting that powerful, magnetic aura of self-sufficiency that makes your presence, in silence or in conversation, truly impossible to ignore. Remembering that you will die is not morbid. It is the ultimate tool for prioritizing what truly matters. In our pursuit of a personality that commands attention, we must confront the one certainty that gives all our actions their weight and meaning, our own impermanence. The Stoics called this practice Memento Mori, a Latin phrase meaning remember you must die. Far from being a dark or depressing fixation, this was for them a vital exercise in clarity, a way to jolt the soul awake from the slumber of trivial pursuits and automatic living. When you genuinely hold the awareness that your time is limited and finite, a profound shift occurs. The noise of the world begins to fade, and the signal of what is essential becomes piercingly clear. Your attention, your energy, and your focus become your most precious currencies, and you stop wasting them on things that, in the grand scheme of a life, simply do not matter. A person who lives with this conscious awareness carries themselves with a unique intensity and purpose that is impossible to ignore, because every action feels intentional, every moment feels charged with significance. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps more than any other Stoic, returned to this meditation again and again in his private writings. He did not shy away from the reality of death. He used it as a whetstone to sharpen his character. In his meditations, he writes, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." And in another passage, he reflects on the fleeting nature of fame and the bodies of long-dead emperors reduced to dust to remind himself of the equality of all fates. For Aurelius, this was not about nihilism but about liberation. The awareness of death liberates you from the petty anxieties of social climbing, the fear of other people's opinions, and the addiction to shallow pleasures. It forces you to ask the most important question: if this is my one life, how shall I live it? The answer for a Stoic is always the same, with virtue, with purpose, and with a deep appreciation for the present moment that you are guaranteed to lose. Consider the transformative power of this practice in the face of life's daily irritations. Imagine you are about to engage in a heated, petty argument with a family member over something trivial, a misplaced comment, a forgotten chore. The ego is flaring up, ready to fight for its right to be right. Now pause and introduce the Memento Mori meditation. bring to mind the fact that your life and theirs will one day end. Visualize the vast expanse of time and see this single, fleeting moment for what it is, infinitesimally small. Does the argument still hold the same weight? Does being right feel as crucial when viewed against the backdrop of mortality? For most, the answer is a resounding no. The practice doesn't make you apathetic, it makes you wise. It allows you to de-escalate, to choose understanding over conflict, to prioritize the love you have for the person over the temporary satisfaction of winning a pointless battle. Your response shifts from reactive anger to measured grace, and that shift communicates a depth of character that silences noise more effectively than any shouted retort ever could. Now apply the same lens to a larger pattern, the habit of wasting an entire afternoon. Perhaps you find yourself mindlessly scrolling through social media, watching videos you don't care about, refreshing a feed out of sheer boredom. The hours slip away and a vague sense of emptiness sets in. Now imagine if, at the start of that afternoon, you had taken just 30 seconds to remember your mortality. This is a day of my life, a day I will never get back. Is this how I want to spend it? This simple question acts as a circuit breaker for autopilot behavior. It doesn't mean every moment must be filled with intense productivity. Rest and leisure are essential, but it forces you to choose your leisure consciously, to engage in activities that genuinely restore you or bring you joy, rather than passively numbing yourself. A person who spends their free time reading a book they love, connecting deeply with a friend, or pursuing a hobby they are passionate about projects of very different energy than someone lost in a digital haze. The first person's time appears valuable because they treat it as such. Their focused engagement with life is a silent, powerful statement about what they value. This practice infuses your presence with a compelling urgency, not a frantic haste but a deliberate intensity. It is the difference between a ship drifting wherever the currents take it and a ship sailing with a specific destination in mind. Both are on the water, but only one has a purpose that is evident in its every movement. When you remember that your journey is finite, you stop drifting. You become more selective about the projects you undertake, the relationships you invest in, and the causes you support. You say no more easily to things that misalign with your core values because you viscerally understand that a yes to something trivial is a no to something meaningful. This discernment is palpable to others. They sense that your time and attention are not cheaply given, and therefore, when you offer them, it feels like a genuine gift. Your very presence becomes a reminder to others to consider their own choices, to wake up to their own lives. To truly feel the weight of this, I invite you to a brief but powerful exercise. Pause the video for just 1 minute. Close your eyes and vividly imagine that this day, today, is the last full day of your life, not in a fearful way but with a clear-eyed acceptance. Now ask yourself, what would I do differently? Who would I reach out to? What petty grievance would I immediately release? What simple pleasure would I savor? The answers that arise in that minute are a compass pointing directly toward what truly matters to you. Carry that clarity forward, not as a burden, but as the ultimate guide for designing a life and a presence of undeniable purpose. What if the most powerful way to assert your presence was to act for the benefit of all? This question leads us to one of the most profound and outwardly focused Stoic practices, the discipline of action for the common good, which is the very essence of the virtue of justice. Up to this point, we have built an internal fortress of character, but a fortress can become a prison if its gates never open. The Stoics understood that true strength is not meant to be hoarded. It is meant to be deployed in service of something larger than oneself. When your actions are guided by a sense of duty to the common welfare, rather than by a hunger for personal recognition or reward, you project a form of moral authority that is both quiet and utterly undeniable. This selfless focus eliminates the scent of desperation and ego that often clings to ambitious actions, replacing it with a purity of intention that commands deep, instinctive respect. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who wielded immense power, constantly reminded himself that his station was a platform for service, not self-indulgence. In his meditations, he writes, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." This simple analogy captures the Stoic view of our interconnectedness. Our individual well-being is inextricably linked to the health of the communities we belong to, our families, our workplaces, our societies. For Aurelius, the rational, virtuous life was a life lived in accordance with this nature, which for human beings is inherently social. He instructed himself to do every act of your life as if it were your last, but to do it with justice, meaning with a regard for the good of others. This shifts the motivation from "what will this do for me" to "is this the right thing to do for us?" When your primary driver is principle, not applause, your actions carry a weight that transactional behavior can never achieve. Consider the example of a leader faced with a deeply unpopular but necessary decision. Imagine a company director during a time of economic downturn. The easy, self-serving path might be to protect the company's short-term stock price by announcing widespread layoffs, a move that could be spun to investors as tough, decisive leadership. This leader might even receive temporary praise for their decisiveness. But now, picture a leader who operates from this Stoic sense of justice. They look at the same difficult situation and see a web of interconnected lives. They recognize that their duty is to the entire hive, the employees, their families, the long-term health of the company, and its customers. This leader might instead propose a different, more challenging solution, perhaps a temporary across-the-board reduction in executive pay and a voluntary reduction in hours, with a clear plan to share the burden more equitably and avoid as many layoffs as possible. This decision will not be popular with everyone, especially those at the top who must sacrifice more. There will be criticism and second-guessing. The leader makes this choice not because they seek to be liked. In fact, they know they will be disliked by some, but because it aligns with their principled duty to the common good. Their quiet resolve in the face of this pressure, their willingness to absorb criticism for a cause greater than themselves, projects an aura of integrity that is far more commanding than any charismatic speech. People may not agree with the decision, but they cannot help but respect the unwavering moral compass behind it. This principle extends far beyond the boardroom and into the fabric of our daily lives. True justice in the Stoic sense is often found in small, anonymous acts. It is the neighbor who shovels the sidewalk of an elderly person on the street without waiting to be asked or thanked. It is the employee who stays late to help a struggling colleague finish a project, not to curry favor with the boss, but simply because it is the right thing to do to support a teammate. It is the person who picks up litter in a public park not for a photo opportunity, but out of a genuine sense of care for the shared environment. In each of these cases, the action is divorced from any expectation of reward or recognition. The motivation is internal, flowing from a personal code that values collective well-being. This is what makes the presence of such a person so compelling. There is no performance, no hidden agenda, only a quiet, consistent demonstration of character. Their actions speak a language of reliability and trustworthiness that is understood by everyone. Engaging in this practice transforms your relationship with the world. You begin to see yourself not as a solitary actor competing for scarce resources, but as a contributing member of a larger whole. This perspective is inherently grounding. It reduces the anxiety that comes from a hyper-focus on the self and replaces it with the calm confidence that comes from acting in alignment with a noble principle. Your presence becomes a stabilizing force because it is oriented toward building and supporting rather than taking and claiming. To start weaving this discipline into your own life, I encourage you to make it practical and immediate. This week, challenge yourself to identify one small, concrete action you can take that benefits your community or a group you belong to, with a firm commitment to seeking zero credit for it. It could be as simple as anonymously donating to a local cause, offering genuine, private encouragement to someone who is struggling, or performing an unnoticed task that makes someone else's life easier. The key is to perform the act for its own sake, as an exercise in justice, and then to let it go. Observe how this focus on contribution rather than acquisition subtly shifts your energy and strengthens the quiet authority of your character. Imagine watching the drama of your life from the audience, not the stage. For a moment, you are not the actor caught in the heat of the scene, delivering your lines with raw emotion. Instead, you are sitting in the darkened theater, observing the plot unfold with a sense of calm curiosity. This shift in perspective is the essence of the observer's mindset, a powerful Stoic technique that grants you the one thing emotional entanglement steals: clarity. When you are embroiled in a situation, your vision is limited to your own role, your own lines, your own immediate reactions. But when you consciously step back and become the witness to the event, even for just a few seconds, you gain access to a panoramic view. You see the other character's motivations, the context of the conflict, and the larger narrative at play. This meta-awareness is like turning on a light in a dark room. It doesn't change the room's contents, but it allows you to navigate it without stumbling. Marcus Aurelius perfected this practice through what he called the view from above meditation. He would mentally elevate his perspective, imagining himself rising above the busy streets of Rome, above the entire province, until he could see the earth as a small blue globe in the vastness of space. From this cosmic vantage point, the quarrels of senators, the threats of enemies, and the frustrations of daily life would shrink to their true proportion. He wasn't dismissing their importance, but he was reframing their scale against the backdrop of eternity. This exercise is a masterclass in gaining objectivity. It reminds us that our current crisis, no matter how all-consuming it feels, is but a single scene in a very long play. The observer's mindset is the practical application of this cosmic view in our everyday moments. It is the conscious decision to pause the internal monologue of panic, anger, or hurt, and to simply watch what is happening, both externally and within yourself, as if you were a neutral scientist collecting data. Consider the fertile ground of a family disagreement, where emotions often run highest and old patterns are quick to trigger reactive behavior. Picture a typical scenario: a holiday gathering where a comment from a relative about your career choice, made with perhaps a hint of judgment, lands like a spark on dry tinder. The untrained, automatic response is to immediately jump onto the stage and into the role of the defensive protagonist. Your heart rate quickens, your face flushes, and you fire back a sharp retort, defending your choices and perhaps attacking theirs in return. The conversation escalates, old wounds are reopened, and what began as a minor comment spirals into a full-blown argument that ruins the evening. You are fully entangled, a prisoner of the drama. Now let's replay that scene with the observer's mindset activated. The same comment is made. You feel the familiar jolt of defensiveness rise within you. This is natural, and you cannot stop the initial impression. But before that feeling translates into a reactive words, you create a sliver of space. In that space, you consciously step back. You imagine yourself as an audience member watching this interaction unfold on a stage. From this detached vantage point, you observe the characters. You see your relative, perhaps speaking from a place of their own fears or generational values. You observe your own physiological reaction, the tightness in your chest, the heat in your face without judgment. You see the entire context, a room full of people you love, a table filled with food, a holiday meant for connection. From the audience, the comment appears smaller, just one line in a much larger production. This observational pause allows you to respond instead of react. You might choose to take a breath and say nothing, allowing the comment to hang in the air and lose its power. You might ask a gentle, curious question like, "I'm interested in what makes you say that," which de-escalates the confrontation and invites dialogue instead of combat. Or you might simply offer a calm, non-committal smile and change the subject, recognizing that this particular stage is not the right place for this particular battle. Your response is no longer an automatic emotional discharge. It is a wise, strategic choice made from a place of empowered clarity. This practice transforms you from a puppet of your circumstances into the director of your responses. The observer is not passive. They are profoundly in control because they are not controlled by the script. They can see when a scene is heading toward a tragic ending and choose to rewrite it. This mindset is the ultimate tool for emotional regulation and intelligent action. It is the difference between being a leaf tossed in a storm and being the tree that, while swaying, remains rooted and observant of the weather patterns. To begin cultivating this powerful perspective today, I invite you to a simple exercise. Later, when you find yourself in a stressful situation, whether it's a frustrating commute, a tense work email, or a minor conflict, make a conscious choice to practice being the observer for just 60 seconds. Notice the physical sensations in your body without trying to change them. Listen to the words being spoken as if you were a journalist reporting on the event. Watch your own thoughts and emotions float by like clouds in the sky without grabbing onto them. This small act of mental distancing is not about becoming cold or disconnected. It is about giving yourself the freedom to choose your next move with wisdom, rather than having it chosen for you by untrained impulses. The eyes are not just a window to the soul, they are a broadcast of your inner state. Before a single word is spoken, your gaze is already communicating volumes about your confidence, your focus, and your emotional equilibrium. In the Stoic pursuit of an unignorable presence, mastering this non-verbal language is as crucial as mastering your thoughts, for the body is the instrument through which the disciplined mind expresses itself. A steady, calm, and direct gaze is the physical manifestation of the inner virtues we have been building. It is courage made visible and honesty translated into a silent, universal dialect. It signals to the world that you are fully present, that you have nothing to hide, and that you are meeting the moment with unwavering composure. While the Stoics may not have written a specific treatise on eye contact, their teachings on bearing and countenance are filled with references to the importance of a dignified external presentation. They understood that philosophy was not an abstract exercise confined to the mind. It was a way of being that had to be embodied. A shifty, darting gaze or a persistently downcast look betrays an internal world in turmoil, a mind distracted by fears, insecurities, or dishonest intentions. It suggests a person who is not fully in command of themselves, who is perhaps avoiding a truth or seeking an escape. Conversely, a gaze that meets another with gentle firmness broadcasts a soul that is ordered and self-possessed. This is not about a cold, intimidating stare, which can be just as revealing of inner imbalance. The Stoic ideal is a gaze of quiet assurance, one that is both strong and respectful, reflecting the virtue of justice in acknowledging the humanity of the person you are engaging with. Consider the palpable difference in a challenging conversation, such as giving or receiving difficult feedback. Imagine one person who, while delivering a critical point, cannot maintain eye contact. Their eyes flit around the room, looking at the floor, the window, anywhere but at the person they are speaking to. This nonverbal cue instantly undermines their message. It communicates discomfort, a lack of conviction, and even a hint of deception, whether intended or not. The recipient of the feedback is less likely to trust the message because the messenger appears untrustworthy. The entire interaction is weakened by this simple failure of bearing. Now picture the alternative. The speaker maintains a soft but steady gaze. They are not glaring, but they are present. This does not make the feedback easier to hear, but it frames it within a context of respect and integrity. The speaker appears courageous, willing to stand by their words and engage in an honest, albeit difficult, exchange. The recipient, even if they disagree, is far more likely to perceive the feedback as coming from a place of genuine concern rather than malice or evasion. The power of the steady gaze here is that it aligns the external action with the internal intention, creating a congruence that commands respect. This principle extends to every form of human interaction, from a job interview to a casual chat with a friend. When you offer someone your full visual attention, you are offering them a profound gift, the gift of feeling seen and heard. In a world saturated with digital distractions, the act of genuinely looking at someone when they speak is becoming increasingly rare and therefore increasingly powerful. It is a silent declaration that, in this moment, they are the most important thing in your world. This builds trust and rapport on a subconscious level, making people more open to your influence and more likely to view you as a person of substance. The practice of maintaining a steady gaze is also a powerful feedback mechanism for your own inner state. If you find your eyes wanting to dart away, it is often a signal of your own discomfort or uncertainty. Recognizing this allows you to pause, take a breath, and re-anchor yourself in your Stoic principles, using the external behavior as a cue to check and fortify your internal composure. To integrate this powerful tool into your own practice, I challenge you to a very specific and immediate exercise. In your next important conversation, whether it is with a colleague, a loved one, or even a stranger providing you a service, make a conscious decision to be mindful of your eye contact. Notice if your instinct is to look away when making a key point or when listening to something that makes you feel vulnerable. Do not strive for a perfection that feels forced or intense, but simply aim for a gentle, sustained connection. Observe how this small adjustment influences the dynamics of the interaction. Does it make you feel more confident? Does it seem to make the other person more engaged? This is not about winning a staring contest. It is about aligning your most immediate form of non-verbal communication with the quiet, unshakable confidence you are cultivating within. Your eyes, after all, are the ambassadors of your character. Ensure they are delivering a message of strength and integrity. Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. This powerful idea, famously expressed by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, captures a spirit that is deeply resonant with Stoic wisdom. It translates to a love of one's fate, and it represents perhaps the most radical and liberating mindset we can adopt. This is not a passive resignation or a bitter acceptance of misfortune. It is an active, enthusiastic embrace of every single event in your life, the triumphs and the tragedies, the joys and the heartbreaks, as if you had chosen each one yourself. It is the decision to see every obstacle, every setback, and every piece of bad luck not as a deviation from your path, but as an essential part of the path itself. A person who lives by this principle eliminates the energy-draining habits of complaining, regret, and resistance. In their place, they cultivate a radiant, unshakable acceptance that transforms every experience into fuel for growth. This profound acceptance finds a clear echo in the teachings of Epictetus, who instructed his students to will what the universe wills. He said, "Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish events to happen as they do, and your life will go well." This is the Stoic foundation of Amor Fati. It is the understanding that fighting against reality is a battle you can never win. The event has already happened. The circumstance is already here. Your only true choice lies in your response, by choosing not merely to endure what happens, but to wholeheartedly welcome it. You align your will with the flow of existence itself. This alignment is the source of an incredible inner peace. You are no longer at odds with the world. You are in a collaborative dance with it, even when the steps are difficult. This does not mean you become a doormat or abandon the effort to improve things within your control. It means you start from a place of clear-eyed acceptance of the current situation, which is the only solid ground from which effective action can ever be launched. Consider the transformative power of this mindset when applied to a significant career setback. Imagine two talented individuals who both lose their jobs unexpectedly due to a company-wide downsizing. The first person responds with fury and despair. They spend weeks complaining about the unfairness of it all, ruminating on the betrayal, and frantically applying for any job out of a place of fear and bitterness. Their energy is scattered and negative. In interviews, this desperation can be sensed, making it harder to secure a new position. Their presence becomes heavy with resentment. Now picture the second individual who practices Amor Fati. The initial shock and disappointment are real, but they are quickly followed by a conscious reframing. This person tells themselves, "This happened. It is now part of my story. I choose to love this fate because it is mine." From this accepting foundation, they begin to ask different questions. Instead of, "Why did this happen to me?" they ask, "What is this situation forcing me to become? What new doors might this closing open?" They might realize they were deeply unhappy in that corporate role, and that this push is the catalyst they needed to finally start their own business or retrain for a field they are truly passionate about. They approach their job search with a sense of purpose and curiosity, not panic. Their demeanor radiates a resilient optimism that is incredibly attractive to potential employers. The setback hasn't broken them, it has revealed a strength they didn't know they had. Their love of fate has turned a disaster into a pivot point, and that quiet confidence is unmistakable. This practice extends to the smallest irritations of daily life as well. A missed train, a sudden rainstorm, a broken appliance. Each of these can be met with frustration or with a shrug of Amor Fati. When you choose the latter, you refuse to allow a minor external event to dictate your internal state. You might say to yourself, "Well, this is my reality now. Let's see what this unexpected delay or change of plans makes possible." Perhaps the missed train leads to a conversation with a stranger that becomes a valuable connection. Perhaps the rainy afternoon forces you indoors to finally read that book you've been putting off. By loving the moment as it is, you unlock possibilities that would remain invisible to the person who is busy fighting what is already true. This consistent practice builds a personality that is fluid and adaptable, able to find opportunity in chaos and peace in the midst of turmoil. It is the ultimate expression of the Stoic belief that our power lies not in controlling events, but in mastering our judgments about them. To begin weaving this profound acceptance into the fabric of your own life, take a quiet moment to look at a current challenge you are facing. It could be a personal conflict, a health concern, or a professional hurdle. Instead of seeing it as an enemy to be defeated, can you try, even for a day, to see it as a necessary part of your journey? Can you identify one small way in which this difficulty is strengthening you, teaching you patience, or redirecting you toward a better path? The act of looking for the gift within the obstacle is the first step toward loving your fate and unlocking the unshakable power that comes with it. What if true emotional strength was shown not in the intensity of your feelings, but in your mastery over their expression? This question strikes at the heart of the Stoic virtue of temperance, especially as it applies to the way we reveal our inner world to others. In our journey to build an unignorable presence, we must navigate the delicate balance between emotional suppression and emotional indulgence. The Stoic goal is not to become a stone-faced statue devoid of feeling. Rather, it is to ensure that our emotional expressions are proportionate, rational, and ultimately chosen, rather than being involuntary eruptions that hijack our composure. This mastery over expression is what separates a personality of depth from one of mere drama. When you exercise temperance, your feelings are not diminished, they are refined. They gain weight and significance because they are expressed from a place of conscious choice, making them far more impactful and respected when they do surface. Seneca's profound work on anger serves as our essential guide here. He draws a critical distinction between the initial, involuntary flash of feeling what he calls the first movement, and the full-blown passion of anger that follows if we give it our assent. He uses a powerful analogy describing the first movement as similar to recoiling from a perceived threat, like flinching when someone suddenly claps their hands near your face. That initial startle is a physiological reaction beyond your immediate control. The Stoic practice begins with what happens next. Do you take that startle and fuel it into a raging fire of indignation? Or do you acknowledge the sensation, observe it, and then, with your faculty of reason, choose not to fan the flames? Seneca argues that the wise person experiences these first movements, but does not consent to the destructive passion that wants to follow. This is temperance in action, feeling the emotion without being enslaved by its most extreme and irrational expression. Consider the starkly different impact of two people receiving the same piece of wonderfully unexpected news, perhaps a surprise promotion, or the announcement that a loved one is returning home after a long absence. The first individual is swept away by hysterical excitement. They might scream, jump up and down uncontrollably, and become so overwhelmed that they are momentarily incapable of coherent speech or thoughtful action. While their joy is genuine, its chaotic expression can actually be jarring to others, and it often leaves the person feeling drained and scattered once the initial wave passes. Now picture the second person. They receive the same news. A wave of joy washes over them, visible in a bright, genuine smile and perhaps a tear of happiness. But they breathe through the initial surge. Their expression of gratitude is deep and heartfelt but measured. They might offer a firm, sincere handshake or a warm, contained embrace, and their words of thanks are clear and purposeful. This measured response does not mean they feel the good news any less deeply. In fact, it suggests they feel it so profoundly that they wish to honor the moment with a response that has gravity and presence. Their tempered expression communicates control and depth, making the emotion itself seem more substantial and authentic. The feeling is given space to be fully integrated and appreciated, rather than being exploded in a momentary flash. This principle of temperance is equally crucial, if not more so, when navigating negative emotions. A measured expression of disappointment or concern carries far more persuasive power than a full-blown outburst of anger or despair. In a professional setting, calmly and clearly stating, "I am concerned about this deadline because of A, B, and C," invites problem-solving and collaboration. A dramatic explosion of frustration, on the other hand, shuts down communication, puts others on the defensive, and often damages your credibility. Temperance allows your legitimate feelings to be heard without the static of uncontrolled emotion distorting the message. It ensures that your emotional energy is deployed strategically, like a precision tool, rather than being wasted in a scattered blast that leaves little lasting impact beyond a memory of instability. To connect this to your own experience, take a moment to look back on a recent situation where you felt a strong emotion. It could be anger, frustration, or even excessive excitement. Recall your reaction. Did your expression match the true proportion of the event, or did it perhaps tip into melodrama? How might a more tempered response have changed the outcome, or even just the way you felt about the situation afterwards? Recognizing this difference is the first step toward ensuring that your emotional expressions become powerful reinforcements of your character, rather than distractions from it. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. These powerful words from the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius capture a fundamental shift in perception that lies at the very heart of Stoic resilience. This is not a clever play on words or a simplistic call to look on the bright side. It is a profound philosophical stance that transforms your entire relationship with difficulty. Most of us are trained to see obstacles as unwanted interruptions to our plans, as barriers that stand between us and our goals. We resent them, we fight them, and when they appear, we often feel a sense of victimization, as if the universe is personally conspiring against our happiness. But the Stoic practice of obstacle perception invites us to flip this script entirely. It asks us to see every single barrier, every setback, and every frustration not as a roadblock, but as the very path itself. The challenge is not something to be avoided. It is the training ground where virtue is forged and character is revealed. When you internalize this perspective, you undergo a metamorphosis from a passive victim of circumstances to an active agent of your own growth. A victim mentality is inherently powerless. It places the source of your problems and the responsibility for solutions outside of yourself. An agent mentality, however, is rooted in the core Stoic principle that while we may not control external events, we always retain control over our judgments, our values, and our responses. Viewing an obstacle as an opportunity is the ultimate expression of this agency. It is the decision to stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What does this situation make possible? What virtue can I practice here? How can this difficulty strengthen me?" This shift does not make the obstacle disappear, but it changes its nature entirely. It ceases to be a threat and becomes a tool, and a person who wields difficulty as a tool projects an aura of invincibility, not because they are immune to pain, but because they have mastered the art of alchemy, turning leaden setbacks into golden strength. Marcus Aurelius, who faced endless military campaigns, political betrayals, and personal loss during his reign, constantly returned to this idea in his private meditations. He wrote, "Our actions may be impeded, but there can be no impeding our intentions or our dispositions, because we can accommodate and adapt. The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting." The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. For Aurelius, an obstacle was simply raw material for the exercise of virtue. A person acts with injustice towards you. That is your opportunity to practice the virtue of justice by responding with fairness. A situation evokes fear. That is your chance to practice courage. A setback tempts you to despair. That is the moment to cultivate the resilience of temperance and wisdom. The obstacle, in each case, is not an interruption of your philosophical practice. It is the practice. It is the specific, custom-designed challenge you need to become a stronger, wiser version of yourself. Consider the powerful application of this principle in the dynamic world of an entrepreneur. Imagine a founder who has poured their heart and soul into a new business. They have a 5-year plan, a growing customer base, and a clear vision for the future. Then a sudden and severe market crash occurs. Demand evaporates overnight. Investors pull out. The economic landscape that once seemed fertile is now a desert. The victim mindset would see this as an unmitigated disaster. The entrepreneur might spiral into blame, anger, and despair, seeing all their hard work rendered meaningless by forces entirely beyond their control. They are a victim of the economy, a casualty of bad timing. Their presence becomes one of defeat and frustration. Now, picture the entrepreneur who has adopted the Stoic practice of obstacle perception. They see the same market crash. The initial shock and concern are real, but they are quickly followed by the pivotal question: how does this become the way? This mindset forces a radical reassessment. The collapse of the old market reveals its inherent fragility and perhaps its flaws. This obstacle becomes the forcing function for innovation that the entrepreneur might have been too comfortable to pursue otherwise. It creates an opportunity to pivot, to build a leaner, more efficient operation, to identify and serve a new, more resilient niche that the boom times had obscured. The obstacle of the crash becomes the very path to creating a more adaptable and ultimately stronger company. The founder who operates from this place does not radiate desperation. They project a calm, determined focus. They are not bemoaning their fate. They are actively engaging with it, using the pressure of the obstacle to diamondize their business and their own character. Their presence commands respect because it demonstrates a profound resilience that is rare and magnetic. This practice is not reserved for grand, life-altering events. Its true power is revealed in the daily friction of ordinary life. The traffic jam that makes you late becomes an opportunity to practice patience and to observe the world without immediately reacting with frustration. The critical feedback on a project you cared about becomes a chance to practice humility and discernment, sifting through the comments for the kernel of truth that will make your work better. Even a common cold can be reframed as a forced opportunity to slow down, to rest, and to practice listening to the needs of your body. In each case, the obstacle is a specific invitation to exercise a specific virtue. When you begin to see your life through this lens, you stop waiting for perfect conditions to be happy or successful. You realize that the perfect condition for growth is, in fact, the presence of a worthy challenge. Your journey is no longer about avoiding storms, but about learning to dance in the rain, understanding that the storm itself is what makes you a skilled dancer. To integrate this transformative practice into your own life right now, take a moment to bring to mind one current obstacle that feels significant. It might be a relational tension, a financial worry, or a health concern. Now, courageously ask yourself the Stoic question: how can this become the way? What specific virtue, courage, patience, creativity, wisdom does this challenge call upon me to develop? By reframing this single obstacle as your personal training ground, you take the first step toward a presence that is not easily shaken, a character that welcomes difficulty as its most effective teacher. How you end your day shapes how you begin the next. The Stoics ended with a mirror. They understood that the final moments of wakefulness were not for distraction or mental clutter, but for a purposeful and honest conversation with oneself. This practice of evening reflection, a quiet audit of the day now past, is where the theoretical principles of Stoicism are forged into lived experience. It is the crucial bridge between learning a philosophy and actually living it, transforming abstract ideas into the very substance of your character. A person who engages in this daily ritual is not merely going through the motions of life. They are actively sculpting their soul, learning from every interaction and every choice. This commitment to continuous, conscious improvement projects a wisdom and intentionality that is unmistakable. It signals that you are the author of your life, carefully editing each chapter before beginning the next. The Roman philosopher Seneca was a devoted practitioner of this art. In his moral letters, he describes his nightly routine with vivid clarity. He would sit in the quiet of his room and ask his soul a series of probing questions. "What bad habit have you cured today?" he would inquire. "What fault have you resisted? In what respect are you better?" This was not an exercise in self-flagellation or pride. It was a dispassionate inventory, much like a merchant reviewing their accounts. Seneca believed that without this daily reckoning, we sleepwalk through our lives, repeating the same mistakes and missing countless opportunities for growth. He argued that the unexamined day is a day lost to the potential for progress. By holding up this metaphorical mirror each night, we confront our true selves, not the idealized version we present to the world, but the person we were in our moments of challenge, temptation, and decision. This honest confrontation is the bedrock of integrity, ensuring that our actions gradually align with our professed values. To make this powerful practice accessible, consider adopting a simple 3-question framework that captures the essence of the Stoic examination. The first question is, what did I do well today? This is not about fostering arrogance, but about reinforcing virtuous behavior. Perhaps you maintained your composure during a frustrating delay, showing apatheia. Maybe you offered sincere help to a colleague without being asked, exercising justice. Or you chose to listen deeply in a conversation instead of waiting for your turn to speak, practicing the economy of words. Acknowledging these successes, however small, strengthens the neural pathways associated with virtuous action, making it more likely you will choose that path again tomorrow. It turns positive actions into conscious habits. The second question is, what could I have improved? This requires gentle honesty, not harsh self-criticism. Here, you look for the gap between your intentions and your actions. Did you snap at a loved one after a stressful day, allowing an external event to dictate your internal state? Did you procrastinate on an important task, failing to act with purpose? Did you remain silent when you should have spoken up with courage? The goal is to identify the specific moment where your practice faltered, not to condemn yourself for being imperfect. This transforms mistakes from failures into invaluable data points for growth. You are not a failure for stumbling. You are a student who has just identified a key area for tomorrow's lesson. The third and most encompassing question is, did I live according to my values today? This pulls the lens back to the widest possible view, assessing the day not by a checklist of actions, but by the overall direction of your character. Did your choices reflect the personal code of virtue you are striving to build? Were you the person you aspire to be, even in the small, unnoticed moments? This question ensures that your daily reflections are always tethered to your ultimate purpose, preventing the practice from devolving into mere nitpicking. It reminds you that the goal is not flawless performance, but a life of coherent and meaningful integrity. A person who can answer this question affirmatively most days carries a quiet confidence that comes from knowing they are on their chosen path. The profound impact of this habit extends far beyond self-improvement. It fundamentally alters your presence in the world. When you end your day with reflection, you are effectively processing the emotional and mental residue of the day's events. You are acknowledging your missteps and learning from them, which prevents them from festering into regret or shame. You are celebrating your small victories, which builds a resilient sense of self-worth that is independent of external praise. This nightly cleansing allows you to greet the new day with a clean slate, unburdened by the baggage of yesterday. Your mind is clearer, your focus is sharper, and your demeanor is more composed because you are not carrying forward unresolved conflicts or unlearned lessons. This creates a presence that is both grounded and forward-looking, a person who is fully present in the now because they have made peace with the then. To truly understand the transformative power of this practice, the most effective approach is to experience it directly. I encourage you to make a simple commitment to yourself. For the next 3 nights before you drift off to sleep, set aside just 5 minutes. Find a quiet space free from distractions and ask yourself these 3 questions. You do not need to write pages in a journal. Even a few moments of sincere mental reflection will set this powerful process in motion. This is not about adding another task to your already busy life. It is about investing a few minutes to ensure that the rest of your waking hours are lived with greater intention, clarity, and power. What if recognizing your connection to everyone else was the key to a more grounded presence? This brings us to a beautiful and expansive Stoic principle known as Sympatheia, the profound recognition that we are all part of a single, interconnected whole. In our journey to build an inner citadel, it might seem like we are focusing solely on the self, creating a fortress that separates us from the world. But Sympatheia is the philosophy that ensures the gates of that fortress remain open, that our inner strength is used not for isolation, but for wiser, more compassionate engagement. It is the understanding that every human being is a thread in the same vast tapestry, and that seeing this connection is the ultimate antidote to the twin poisons of lonely isolation and arrogant separateness. When you genuinely feel that you belong to the human family, a deep-seated calmness settles over you. The exhausting need to prove you are better than others, or the anxious fear that you are not good enough, begins to dissolve. You are freed from the burdensome weight of ego, and in its place arises a humble confidence that is both peaceful and powerfully magnetic. Marcus Aurelius, from the pinnacle of imperial power, constantly reminded himself of this fundamental unity. In his meditations, he writes, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." With this simple analogy, he captures the essence of Stoic cosmology. Just as a single bee cannot thrive if the hive is sick, an individual cannot find true flourishing if they are cut off from or acting against the common good. He also instructs himself to frequently meditate on how all things are interwoven and, in a sense, intertwined with one another. For Aurelius, this wasn't just a poetic notion, it was a practical tool for governance and personal conduct. Recognizing our interconnectedness fosters a sense of natural duty and kindness. It shifts our focus from a narrow, self-centered view to a wider, more inclusive perspective. This shift does not diminish your individuality, it grounds it within a meaningful context. You are no longer a solitary ship battling the ocean alone, but part of a vast fleet, each vessel unique but all navigating the same seas under the same stars. This awareness is inherently grounding, replacing social anxiety with a sense of shared journey, and replacing the urge to dominate with a desire to contribute. Consider how this perspective can directly dissolve the kind of social anxiety that stems from feeling like an outsider. Imagine walking into a room full of strangers, your mind buzzing with thoughts of being judged or not measuring up. The ego is in overdrive, constructing a narrative of separation where you are on one side and everyone else is on the other. Now, apply the principle of Sympatheia. Before you enter, pause for a moment and consciously shift your perception. Instead of seeing a room of potential critics, try to see a gathering of human beings who, just like you, have known joy and sorrow, who have hopes and fears, who desire connection and understanding. See them not as judges but as fellow travelers. This simple mental reframe can be transformative. the pressure to perform or impress melts away because you are no longer approaching the situation from a place of lack or defensive comparison. You are approaching it from a place of shared humanity. Your interactions become more authentic and curious because you are genuinely interested in the other threads in the tapestry. Your presence becomes more relaxed and inviting because you are not putting up a defensive wall. You are, in a sense, coming home to your tribe. This same principle works equally powerfully to dismantle the need to prove superiority, which is often just a mask for deep-seated insecurity. When you truly internalize that we are all interconnected, the very idea of being better than someone else loses its meaning. How can one part of the whole be superior to another? The hand is not superior to the foot. They have different functions but are both essential to the body. Similarly, the CEO and the janitor, the famous artist and the unknown volunteer, are all playing different roles in the complex organism of society. A person who embodies Sympatheia understands this intuitively. They don't need to assert their importance because their sense of worth comes from their harmonious participation in the whole, not from being ranked above others. This creates a humble confidence that is incredibly attractive. It is the confidence of a mountain. It does not need to announce its size, it simply is. This absence of posturing and pretense allows your genuine character to shine through, unobscured by the static of ego. People are drawn to this authentic humility because it feels safe and real. To truly feel the power of this connection, I invite you to a brief but profound contemplation. Bring to mind someone you typically see as very different from you, perhaps someone with opposing political views from a different cultural background, or even just a colleague you find difficult to understand. Now, set aside those surface differences for a moment and actively search for one fundamental way in which you are connected. It might be the shared experience of loving a child, the universal desire for safety and respect, or the common capacity to feel joy and pain. Can you find that single thread that ties your life to theirs? In recognizing that connection, however small, you are practicing Sympatheia and taking a vital step toward a presence that is both strong and seamlessly woven into the fabric of all that is. The ability to say no is a silent proclamation of your priorities and self-respect. In a culture that often equates agreeableness with virtue and busyness with importance, the simple act of declining a request can feel like a transgression. We fear being seen as unhelpful, selfish, or missing out. But from a Stoic perspective, the capacity to set a firm and graceful boundary is not a sign of weakness or discourtesy. It is a profound expression of the virtue of justice, first and foremost toward yourself. The Stoics taught that to live according to nature and reason, we must exercise constant discernment. Our time, energy, and attention are our most finite and precious resources. To squander them on activities, commitments, or people that misalign with our core values is an act of injustice against our own potential and purpose. Every yes we give to something that is not essential is in effect a no to something that is. The person who can decline gracefully is sending a powerful, non-verbal message to the world. My life is directed by intention, not by accident or obligation. This clarity of purpose is a cornerstone of an unignorable presence. Think of your willpower and focus as a fortress garrison. If you station your soldiers at every gate to welcome every passing request, your central citadel will be left undefended. The art of declining is the strategic decision about where to post your guards. It is not about building walls to keep the world out, but about ensuring you have the resources and space to honor your true commitments. The Stoics weren't hermits, they were actively engaged in their communities, but their engagements were chosen, not defaulted into. They understood that a life lived by default is a life half lived. By saying no to the non-essential, you are saying a resounding yes to your chosen path, to your peace of mind, and to the quality of your contributions. This selective focus means that when you do say yes, your engagement is full, present, and powerful. You are not the person who is physically there but mentally exhausted and resentful. You are the person who is fully there, whose participation is meaningful because it was a conscious choice. Consider a practical, everyday scenario. You've had an intensely demanding week at work, and your energy reserves are completely depleted. A friend invites you to a large, noisy party on Friday night. The automatic, people-pleasing response is to force a smile and say, "Sure, I'll be there," even though the very thought drains you further. You go, you spend the evening feeling stretched thin, you contribute little to the conversations, and you return home even more exhausted, sacrificing the restorative solitude you desperately needed. Now imagine applying the Stoic art of declining gracefully. Your response is polite, firm, and honest, devoid of lengthy excuses or apologetic tones. You might say, "Thank you so much for the invitation. That sounds like it will be a wonderful time. I need to honor my need for rest this evening, so I'm going to have to decline. I hope you all have a fantastic time." This response does several things. It expresses gratitude for the invitation, showing you value the relationship. It states your decision clearly, and most importantly, it roots your reason in your own values, honoring your well-being. There is no lie about a prior engagement, no drama, no need for the other person to manage your feelings. You take full ownership of your choice. The person receiving this response may be momentarily disappointed, but they will also instinctively respect the clarity and self-awareness behind it. You have communicated that your time is valuable and that you are the steward of your own energy. This practice extends far beyond social events into the professional realm. The inability to say no is a primary cause of burnout, mediocrity, and misaligned careers. The employee who accepts every task, even those far outside their expertise or capacity, becomes a bottleneck of stress and eventually delivers poor results on everything. In contrast, the colleague who can gracefully say, "I would love to help, but given my current project load, I wouldn't be able to give this the attention it deserves without compromising my other commitments," projects are professional boundaries and a respect for quality that earns long-term trust. They are not being difficult, they are being realistic and responsible. This discernment protects not only their own performance, but also the overall success of the team. It is an act of justice towards their work, their colleagues, and themselves. To begin integrating this essential skill, take a quiet moment to look at your current commitments, the meetings on your calendar, the social plans for the weekend, the optional tasks you've taken on. Is there one obligation that, upon honest reflection, drains your energy without contributing to your core values or well-being? Identify that one commitment. Then consider how you might gracefully, politely, and firmly create a boundary around it. The act of identification is the first step toward reclaiming the authority over your own time and energy, and in doing so, strengthening the silent, respectful presence you project to the world. The oak tree does not grow in a day, and neither does an unignorable character. We live in a world captivated by the allure of instant results, where trends explode into existence and fade into obscurity within a single season, and where personal development is often marketed as a quick fix, a 30-day transformation. This frantic pace creates an illusion that significance can be achieved rapidly, but the Stoics understood a deeper, more enduring truth. The cultivation of a personality that commands respect in silence is not a project with a deadline. It is a lifelong practice, a continuous journey of refinement that requires the profound virtue of patience. Embracing this long-term perspective is, in itself, a powerful statement. It signals that you are not chasing fleeting validation, but are invested in building something of substance, a depth of character that can only be forged through consistent, dedicated effort over years and decades. This patient commitment to the long game is inherently impressive because it is so rare, projecting a stability that stands in stark contrast to the chaotic churn of modern life. Seneca, in his profound letters on the brevity of life, constantly warned against the folly of postponing our philosophical practice. He lamented how we waste our most precious resource, time, on trivialities, acting as if we have an endless supply of days ahead of us. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." For Seneca, the solution was not to rush, but to begin immediately and to persist without interruption. He advocated for the power of consistent, daily effort, comparing it to water dripping continuously onto a stone, which, over time, will wear it away. This is the essence of Stoic patience. It is not a passive waiting, but an active, relentless application of principle, day after day, trusting that the cumulative effect of small, right actions will compound into an unshakable character. It is the understanding that true wisdom is not a prize to be won, but a path to be walked, one deliberate step at a time. Consider the striking difference in presence between two archetypes in our culture. On one hand, we have the flash in the pan influencer who achieves viral fame overnight. Their presence is loud, attention-grabbing, and intensely captivating for a moment. They command a massive audience, but their influence is often brittle, built on a foundation of novelty that quickly wears thin. When the next trend emerges, their spotlight fades, and their presence, which once seemed so dominant, evaporates because it lacked the deep roots of authentic character. Now contrast that with the presence of a respected elder in a community, someone whose wisdom has been earned through decades of experience, loss, learning, and perseverance. This person may speak very little, but when they do, the room falls silent. Their words carry weight not because they are cleverly packaged, but because they are backed by a life lived with integrity. Their patience in developing their character, their willingness to learn from countless mistakes, to endure seasons of difficulty without giving up, has resulted in a gravitas that is simply unattainable through shortcuts. We are drawn to such people because their presence feels authentic and reliable. They are like ancient oak trees, offering shade and stability in a world of fast-growing, fragile weeds. This principle of long-term thinking transforms your relationship with the daily practice of Stoicism. When you approach the discipline of assent or the practice of negative visualization as a lifelong endeavor, you release the pressure to be perfect today. A setback, a moment of lost composure, or a failure to live up to your virtues is no longer a catastrophic failure that makes you want to abandon the entire project. It becomes a single data point in a long-term experiment, a valuable lesson that contributes to your overall growth. This patient perspective fosters self-compassion and resilience. It allows you to get back on the path after a stumble without self-flagellation, understanding that the journey of 1,000 miles inevitably includes a few missteps. Your demeanor becomes less frantic and more measured because you are not desperately trying to fix your entire character by Friday. You are patiently tending to it, like a gardener nurturing a prized tree, knowing that its greatest strength will be revealed not in weeks but in years. To truly embed this patient mindset into your own life, the most powerful step you can take is to make a conscious, long-term commitment. The modern world encourages us to sample everything, to jump from one self-improvement technique to another in search of the magic bullet. The Stoic path invites you to do the opposite, to choose depth over breadth. Instead of trying to master all 29 principles we have discussed at once, the goal is to select just one and commit to practicing it with patience and consistency for the foreseeable future. This is not about a temporary challenge, but about a fundamental reorientation of your efforts. Perhaps you choose to focus on the economy of words, making a conscious effort to speak only when your words will improve upon silence. Or maybe you commit to the evening reflection, spending 5 minutes each night in honest self-assessment. The specific practice matters less than the depth of your commitment. By focusing on a single virtue or discipline over the long haul, you allow it to sink from a conscious effort into an unconscious habit, from something you do into something you are. This is how an unignorable character is built, not in a whirlwind of activity, but in the quiet, patient accumulation of countless small choices, made day after day after day. The strongest minds are also the most empty of preconceived notions, ready to be filled with truth. This might seem like a paradox in a world that often equates confidence with having all the answers, but the Stoics understood a profound secret. The foundation of genuine wisdom is not knowledge, but the courageous admission of ignorance. This is the practice of intellectual humility, and it is not a weakness to be hidden but a formidable strength to be cultivated. A personality that is unignorable is not one that bulldozes conversations with unshakable opinions. It is one that listens with a quiet intensity, that asks more questions than it provides answers, and that remains perpetually open to the possibility that it might be wrong. This quality projects an intellectual honesty that is both disarming and deeply respectable, making people feel valued and drawing the best ideas and insights toward you like a magnet. Epictetus, the philosopher who began his life in bondage, placed this recognition of our own limitations at the very beginning of the philosophical journey. He famously said that the first step toward wisdom is an awareness of our own ignorance. He taught that the person who believes they already know everything has closed the door to learning, while the person who acknowledges the vast expanse of what they do not know has opened a gateway to endless growth. For Epictetus, this wasn't about fostering insecurity. It was about cultivating a state of mind he called docilitas, a readiness to be taught. This is the mindset of the true student of life, regardless of age or status. It is the understanding that every person you meet, every situation you encounter, holds the potential to teach you something, if only you are humble enough to receive the lesson. This stance of openness is the antithesis of intellectual arrogance, which is often just a mask for deep-seated fear. The fear of being wrong, the fear of appearing foolish, the fear of not being in control. Intellectual humility, by contrast, is the quiet confidence of someone who is so secure in their core self that their ego does not need to be defended at every turn. Consider the powerful dynamic this creates in a leadership context. Imagine two different managers facing a significant setback on a project they championed. The first manager, operating from a place of fragile ego, feels their authority is tied to infallibility. When the project fails, they immediately look for external factors to blame: an uncooperative team, unrealistic deadlines, a shifting market. They might double down on their original plan, refusing to listen to alternative suggestions, because admitting a flaw in their strategy feels like an admission of personal failure. Their team watches this, and while they may comply out of obligation, their respect for the leader diminishes. They see someone who is more invested in protecting their image than in achieving the best outcome. Now picture the second manager. They gather the team after the setback and begin with a statement of intellectual humility. They might say, clearly, my initial approach had flaws I did not foresee. I want to understand what I missed. Each of you has a unique perspective. I need your honest feedback on where we went wrong and what we should do differently. This leader is not diminished by this admission. They are elevated. They project a security that is far more powerful than the illusion of omniscience. The team, feeling trusted and valued, will openly share their insights. The leader's humility creates a psychologically safe environment where the best ideas can surface, and the resulting solution will be far stronger for having incorporated diverse perspectives. This leader commands respect not through unquestioned authority, but through undeniable integrity and a shared commitment to the truth. This practice extends far beyond the boardroom and into the fabric of our everyday interactions. Intellectual humility is what allows a parent to truly listen to their teenager's viewpoint on a social issue, even if it challenges their own long-held beliefs, creating a bridge of understanding rather than a wall of generational dogma. It is what allows a seasoned professional to learn a more efficient technique from a new intern, recognizing that fresh eyes often see solutions that experience has blinded us to. It is the willingness to say those three incredibly powerful words, "I was wrong." When you can utter that phrase without self-flagellation, you are demonstrating a strength of character that is both rare and magnetic. People are not looking for perfect leaders, perfect partners, or perfect friends. They are looking for authentic ones, and nothing is more authentic than a person who is still curious, still growing, and humble enough to acknowledge that the journey of learning never ends. To begin weaving this powerful quality into your own life, I invite you to a simple but revealing exercise. Take a quiet moment to look inward and identify one specific area, either in your professional life or your personal beliefs, where you might be holding a little too tightly to being right. Is there a topic you always debate with passion, a method at work you defend out of habit, or a relationship dynamic where you struggle to see the other person's side? Pinpoint that one area. The simple act of naming it is the first step toward loosening your grip. Then, make a conscious decision this week to approach that topic with intentional humility. This doesn't mean you have to abandon your position. It simply means you choose to listen with the primary goal of understanding, rather than with the goal of preparing your rebuttal. Ask open-ended questions. Seek out perspectives that differ from your own, not to defeat them, but to see what you can learn from them. This small shift from knowing to inquiring is the essence of intellectual humility, and it will transform not only what you know, but more importantly, how you connect with the world around you. The ultimate test of your philosophy is not what you say in peace, but how you stand in the storm. All the internal disciplines we have explored, the inner sovereignty, the emotional mastery, the clarity of purpose are, in the end, meant to be lived. They are not abstract ideas to be debated in quiet rooms. They are tools for navigating the chaos of existence, and their final, undeniable product is what we can call the Stoic bearing, a calm, collected demeanor that remains unbroken even when the world is falling apart. This is not an act or a performance. It is the silent, physical evidence of a well-ordered mind, the outward radiance of an inner citadel that has been diligently fortified through practice. When pressure mounts, this bearing is what separates a reactive life from a responsive one, revealing the depth of your character in the very moments when character matters most. The historical accounts of Stoic figures provide us with living portraits of this ideal in action. Consider Cato the Younger, whose composure under extreme political pressure became the stuff of legend. During a pivotal vote in the Roman Senate, his opponents resorted to physically assaulting him, tearing the scroll containing his speech from his hands. Yet, instead of responding with fury or panic, Cato simply continued to speak, his voice steady and his posture unwavering, even as he was dragged from the chamber. His enemies could take his scroll, but they could not touch his inner peace or his resolve. His composure in that moment of chaos was a more powerful statement than any speech could have been. It communicated to everyone present, friend and foe alike, that his principles were not dependent on favorable circumstances. They were rooted so deep within him that external violence could not uproot them. This is the Stoic bearing, not the absence of feeling, but the supreme command over how those feelings are expressed and channeled into decisive, principled action. To see this principle in a modern context, imagine a critical emergency unfolding in a busy hospital emergency room. A patient's condition suddenly and severely deteriorates, setting off a cascade of alarms. In this scenario, you would likely see two very different types of responses. One healthcare professional might succumb to the pressure. Their movements become frantic, their voice rises in pitch, their instructions become hurried and less clear. This panic, while understandable, is contagious. It spreads anxiety to the patient, to the family members present, and to the rest of the team, potentially leading to mistakes and compounding the crisis. Now observe the senior doctor or charge nurse who has cultivated a stoic bearing. They hear the same alarms, they recognize the same grave danger, but instead of panicking, they take a deliberate, almost imperceptible breath. Their face remains focused, not blank. They move with purpose, not with haste. Their voice is calm and measured as they issue clear, concise instructions to the team. This composure does not mean they are unfeeling. It means they have mastered the art of channeling their concern and adrenaline into hyper-focused, effective action. Their calm becomes the eye of the storm, a center of gravity that stabilizes everyone around them. In that moment, their silent, unwavering presence is the most powerful instrument of care in the room. This bearing is the synthesis of every practice we have discussed. It is the economy of words in action, speaking only what is necessary. It is the discipline of assent, pausing between the stimulus of the crisis and the response of leadership. It is the embodiment of courage, facing the danger without being ruled by the fear of it. It is the physical manifestation of apatheia, feeling the urgency without being hijacked by panic. Each principle contributes to this final, visible outcome. When you have done the internal work, the external composure follows naturally. It is not something you can fake in the moment. It is the result of 1,000 small choices made in times of peace. The choice to reflect each evening, to practice voluntary discomfort, to question your initial impressions. The storm simply reveals the quality of the ship you have been building all along. The true power of visualizing this composure lies in its preparation. You do not wait for a life or death crisis to practice this bearing. You train for it in the daily squalls of traffic jams, missed deadlines, and personal disagreements. Each time you choose a measured breath over an angry outburst, or a rational assessment over a fearful assumption, you are strengthening the neural pathways that will fire automatically when a real storm hits. You are building the muscle memory of calm. To make this practical, I want you to take a moment and look ahead. Visualize a challenge you know is coming. It could be a difficult conversation you need to have, a high-stakes presentation at work, or a personal goal that feels daunting. Now close your eyes and vividly imagine yourself navigating that situation with the stoic bearing we have described. See yourself breathing deeply, maintaining steady eye contact, listening more than you speak, and responding to surprises with a thoughtful pause rather than a reactive flare. Feel the sense of inner stability that comes from knowing your worth is not on the line, only your virtuous action is. This mental rehearsal is not mere daydreaming. It is a form of training that prepares your mind and body to act with composure when the moment arrives, transforming philosophy from a concept into a lived and unignorable presence. Your character is not defined by your speeches, but by the consistency of your actions with your principles. This is the final, non-negotiable seal of authenticity that validates every other aspect of the Stoic personality we have been building. You can master the inner dialogue, cultivate a calm demeanor, and practice all the disciplines in solitude. But if there is a visible gap between what you profess to believe and how you actually behave, the entire structure crumbles. Hypocrisy is a silent leak that drains away all the power you have so carefully accumulated, because people are exquisitely sensitive to incongruence. They may not be able to articulate it, but they feel it intuitively, a subtle dissonance that erodes trust and makes your presence feel unreliable. True, unignorable power flows from a state of complete integrity, where your walk and your talk are in perfect, unforced harmony. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who placed immense importance on the practical application of philosophy, was brutally direct on this point. He warned his students against the vanity of merely reciting philosophical doctrines without living them. He said, if you didn't learn these things in order to put them into practice, what did you learn them for? For Epictetus, the lecture hall was a worthless place if its teachings did not manifest in the marketplace, in the home, and in the face of adversity. He argued that someone who speaks eloquently about courage but flees at the first sign of difficulty is not a philosopher, they are a mere word merchant. The true measure of your philosophy is not the elegance of your speech but the quality of your actions when no one is watching, and the steadfastness of your character when the pressure is on. This unwavering alignment is what builds a reputation of ironclad reliability. When people know with certainty that your actions will mirror your words, they grant you a level of trust that cannot be demanded, only earned. Consider the stark contrast in influence between two archetypes. First, picture a highly paid motivational speaker who travels the world delivering powerful sermons on the importance of family, presence, and disconnecting from material wealth. Their words are inspiring, their stories are captivating, and audiences leave feeling charged with purpose. But then, a behind-the-scenes look reveals a different reality. This speaker is constantly on their phone between sessions, ignores their own family, and is primarily motivated by accumulating more wealth and fame. When this gap becomes known, the speaker's power evaporates instantly. Their words become hollow, their presence feels like a performance, and they are quickly dismissed as a hypocrite. Their silence when they are not on stage does not speak of depth but of emptiness. Now, imagine a different person in your own life, perhaps a quiet grandparent, a dedicated teacher, or a humble colleague. This person may never give a formal speech about ethics, but their life is a living testament to their values. They are the first to help someone in need. They consistently follow through on their promises, and they treat everyone with the same fundamental respect, regardless of their status. Their actions are a quiet, continuous broadcast of their inner world. You may not even be able to list their core principles, but you feel them in every interaction. This person's silent presence commands a deep, unwavering respect that the motivational speaker could never achieve, because their integrity is their credibility. This principle of integrity is what turns philosophy from a hobby into a way of life. It is the discipline of ensuring that the virtues we discuss in theory, courage, justice, temperance, wisdom, are the same virtues that guide our choices in the messy reality of daily existence. It means having the courage to admit when you are wrong, even when it is embarrassing. It means practicing justice by standing up for what is right, even when it is inconvenient. It means exercising temperance by turning down a tempting but unethical shortcut, even when no one would ever know. Each time you choose an action that aligns with a principle, you are not just doing the right thing, you are strengthening the neural pathways of integrity, making it your default setting. This consistency creates a personality that is whole, undivided, and therefore immensely powerful. There is no internal conflict between what you believe and what you do, so your energy is not wasted on self-justification or hiding the truth. It is channeled entirely into purposeful living, and that focused energy is palpable to others. To truly fortify this cornerstone of your character, the most powerful step is a moment of courageous self-honesty. The gap between belief and action is often not a dramatic chasm, but a series of small, almost invisible fissures that we learn to ignore. Bringing them into the light is the first step toward closing them. Take a quiet moment to look at the various domains of your life, your work, your relationships, your health, your personal growth. In which one do you sense the faintest whisper of incongruence? Where is there a small but persistent gap between what you know you should be doing and what you are actually doing? Perhaps you advocate for healthy living but consistently neglect your own sleep. Maybe you value lifelong learning but spend your free time on mindless distraction. Or it could be that you preach kindness but are quick to gossip about a colleague. Identify just one area, not to punish yourself, but to pinpoint an opportunity for integration. This act of self-awareness is the essence of the philosophical life. It is the commitment to ensuring that the person you present to the world is in every meaningful way the person you truly are. When you are no longer fed by praise or starved by criticism, you become nourished from within. This state represents one of the most advanced and liberating achievements on the Stoic path, a profound inner equilibrium where your sense of self-worth is entirely decoupled from the ever-shifting winds of external judgment. It is the ultimate expression of the inner sovereignty we have been building, where the citadel of your character is so secure that the cheers of the crowd or the jeers of detractors simply echo harmlessly outside its walls. This is not a cold, unfeeling apathy toward others. It is a warm, self-sufficient contentment that allows you to interact with the world from a place of genuine freedom, rather than from a desperate need for approval or a fearful avoidance of disapproval. Your actions become purer, motivated by an internal compass of virtue rather than by the desire for a reward or the fear of a penalty. Seneca offers some of the most penetrating insights into this practice, particularly in his letters on the fickleness of public opinion. He draws a sharp contrast between the unstable, contradictory nature of the crowd's favor and the unwavering stability of a good conscience. He observes that public praise is as changeable as the weather, and to build your happiness upon it is to build your house on shifting sands. One day you are celebrated, the next you are vilified, often for the very same qualities. Seneca advises that we should treat praise and criticism with the same measured detachment, recognizing that both are based on the often flawed perceptions and fleeting whims of others. The only reliable judge, he argues, is your own rational mind, your own understanding of whether you have acted with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. A clear conscience, he writes, is a fortress that cannot be breached by external opinion. This internal court of judgment is where true freedom is found, liberating you from the exhausting roller coaster of seeking validation and avoiding censure. To see this principle in its most potent form, consider the mindset of a true artist, one who creates purely for the sake of the art itself. Imagine a painter who works for months on a single canvas, pouring their vision, skill, and soul into the work. Upon its completion, they present it to the world. One critic writes a scathing review, calling the piece derivative and uninspired. The very next day, a different critic hails it as a groundbreaking masterpiece. If this artist's sense of accomplishment is tied to these external reviews, their emotional state will be whipsawed into confusion and anxiety. They will not know whether to feel proud or ashamed. But now, imagine the artist who has cultivated stoic indifference. They have done their work to the best of their ability, guided by their own standards of excellence and authenticity. They can read both reviews with a calm curiosity, perhaps looking for a useful technical observation, but their fundamental assessment of the work's value remains unchanged. The painting was a success the moment it was completed because it was an honest expression of their craft. The praise does not inflate their ego because their satisfaction was already complete. The criticism does not deflate them because their self-worth was never on the line. This artist's presence is one of quiet, unassailable confidence. They are not arrogant, but they are grounded in a reality that is independent of popular opinion, making their creative spirit resilient and truly free. This practice extends far beyond the arts into every facet of life. In the workplace, the employee who is indifferent to the petty politics of praise and blame can focus their energy entirely on doing excellent work. They are not distracted by maneuvering for credit or defending themselves against every minor critique. Their consistent, high-quality output, driven by internal standards, naturally earns a more durable form of respect over time. In personal relationships, this freedom allows you to offer love and support without the hidden expectation of reciprocation or gratitude. You can also receive constructive feedback from a partner without hearing it as a personal attack, because your core identity is not threatened. Your actions become cleaner, more generous, and more authentic when they are no longer transactional tools for managing your reputation. This indifference is the final purification of motivation, ensuring that what you do for the right reasons. To bring this powerful concept into your immediate awareness, I challenge you to a simple act of observation. The next time you receive a piece of praise or criticism, whether in person, in a performance review, or even online, pause for just a moment. Before you automatically accept the praise as fuel or the criticism as a wound, notice the physical and emotional reaction it triggers. Does a compliment bring a flush of pleasure that you feel dependent on? Does a critical comment land like a blow, stirring defensiveness or sadness? Simply observing this reaction without judgment is the first step toward recognizing the invisible leash that external opinions still hold over you. This moment of awareness is the beginning of cutting that leash, allowing you to stand freely, nourished by your own virtue. Philosophy is not a theory to be debated, but a practice to be lived. How can you possibly weave the profound principles we have explored from inner sovereignty to Amor Fati into the fabric of your already busy day? The answer lies not in a dramatic overhaul, but in the power of a consistent, minimalist ritual. The Stoics themselves were not armchair philosophers. They were statesmen, soldiers, and slaves who understood that wisdom without application is meaningless. They knew that to build an unignorable character, one must practice philosophy daily, with the same discipline a musician practices scales or an athlete drills fundamentals. This daily practice is the bridge that carries lofty ideals from the page into your posture, your gaze, and your silent presence. The most effective way to begin is by anchoring your day with two simple bookends, a morning preparation and an evening reflection. This creates a rhythm of intentionality where you start with clarity and end with learning. Your morning ritual is not about adding more tasks to your to-do list. It is about setting the inner conditions from which all your actions will flow. Imagine dedicating just 10 minutes after you wake up before you check your phone or dive into the day's demands. This is your sacred space for fortification. Begin with a moment of stillness, simply focusing on your breath to center yourself in the present. Then, engage in a brief session of negative visualization. Calmly bring to mind something you value, your health, your job, a key relationship, and visualize what it would be like to lose it. This isn't to invite pessimism, but to ignite a fierce gratitude for what you have right now, inoculating you against the fear of loss and freeing you from taking your blessings for granted. Next, set your intention for the day ahead based on the cardinal virtues. Ask yourself, how can I practice wisdom in my decisions today? Where might I need courage to speak up or to endure a difficulty? How can I act with justice and fairness in my interactions? And what opportunities will there be to exercise temperance, to moderate my desires and my reactions? You might choose to focus on just one virtue for the day. For example, your intention could be as simple as, today, I will practice temperance by listening more than I speak in the team meeting. This process transforms abstract concepts into a practical guide for your behavior, ensuring you move through the world with purpose. Finally, remind yourself of the dichotomy of control. Mentally outline the day ahead and distinguish between what is within your power, your efforts, your attitudes, your responses, and what is not, the outcomes, other people's opinions, traffic delays. This final step deposits you into your day with a serene focus, ready to invest your energy only where it counts. As the day concludes, your evening ritual, much like Seneca's, is your time for an honest audit. This is not a session of self-criticism, but a dispassionate review, like a merchant balancing their books. Find a few quiet minutes before sleep. Reflect on the day with 3 simple questions. First, what did I do well? Acknowledge the moments you lived in alignment with your intentions, however small. Perhaps you maintained your composure in a frustrating situation or offered a kind word without expecting anything in return. Celebrating these small victories reinforces the neural pathways of virtue. Second, ask, where could I have improved? Look for the gap between your intention and your action with gentle honesty. Did you lose your patience? Did you seek external validation? Identify the specific moment without judgment, seeing it as a learning opportunity, not a failure. Finally, and most importantly, ask yourself, did I live according to my values today? This pulls the lens back to assess the overall direction of your character. This nightly reflection processes the day's events, allowing you to learn from your mistakes and solidify your successes, so you can greet the next morning with a clean slate and accumulated wisdom. The true beauty of this practice is its flexibility. It is a framework, not a rigid prescription. Your ritual should be tailored to your life. Perhaps your morning practice happens during a 5-minute walk or while sipping your coffee. Maybe your evening review is a mental exercise as you lie in bed. The key is consistency, not duration. The goal is to make the conscious practice of philosophy as habitual as brushing your teeth. Over time, these dedicated minutes of reflection will begin to color the entire canvas of your day. The pause of the discipline of assent will become automatic. The calm demeanor will become your natural state. The principles will cease to be something you do and will become who you are. To truly begin this transformation, the most powerful step is to take ownership of the process. Instead of simply adopting the routine I've described, I invite you to design your own. Consider the principles that resonated most deeply with you in this video. Was it the power of intentional silence, the resilience of obstacle perception, the freedom of indifference to praise and blame? Choose one or two that feel most urgent for your life right now. How could you incorporate them into a simple 5 to 10 minute daily ritual that you can realistically commit to for the next 7 days? By designing your own practice, you are not just following a recipe, you are actively engaging in the philosophy of designing your own character. And so we arrive at the end of our journey, having traveled from the noisy, frantic pursuit of external approval to the quiet, unshakable fortress of internal character. We began by observing how our world often mistakes volume for value, and we end with the profound understanding that the most commanding presence is often the one that speaks the softest, because its power is not borrowed from the crowd, but generated from within. This transformation is not about learning a clever social trick or adopting a new persona. It is the result of a fundamental rewiring, a disciplined, daily practice of returning to the bedrock Stoic principles of virtue, emotional mastery, and action aligned with a deeply personal moral code. The unignorable personality we have been designing is not an act you put on for an audience. It is the authentic radiance of a soul that has taken full ownership of its inner world. The path we have walked is not a short one, and that is precisely the point. From establishing your inner sovereignty through the dichotomy of control, to mastering the gap between impulse and response with the discipline of assent, to embracing your fate with Amor Fati, each step has been a building block in constructing a life of purpose and poise. We have explored how a calm demeanor broadcasts inner stability, how the economy of words gives your speech immense weight, and how integrity between your beliefs and actions forges a trust that needs no explanation. This is not a 60-day transformation program. It is the work of a lifetime. It is a continuous, evolving practice of showing up for yourself, day after day, with patience and compassion for the stumbles, and a relentless commitment to getting back on the path. The goal is not perfection, but progress, the quiet, cumulative growth of an oak tree, not the rapid flare of a match. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who knew more about true freedom than most, offered a final, piercing insight that cuts to the very heart of this entire endeavor. He said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. This is the ultimate secret. Your strength, your worth, your unassailable presence. It was never something you needed to acquire from the outside. It has always been waiting within you, in your capacity for rational judgment, your ability to choose virtue, and your power to love the life you have been given." The journey has simply been one of remembering, of clearing away the distractions and the fears that made you forget the citadel you already inhabit. This is where your work truly begins. The principles are here not as abstract ideas to be admired, but as practical tools to be used. The most important step you can take is the first one, choosing a single practice and committing to it. It could be the evening reflection, the premeditation of obstacles, or simply the conscious effort to listen more than you speak. Do not feel you must master everything at once. The power is in the consistency of the effort, not the scale. If this path of practical wisdom resonates with you, and you want to continue building a life of resilience, focus, and quiet strength, consider subscribing to this channel. We are dedicated to turning ancient Stoic philosophy into actionable guidance for modern life, and I would be deeply interested to hear from you in the comments below. Of all the principles we discussed today, which one will you choose to start practicing first? Sharing your intention is a powerful way to solidify your commitment, and it creates a community of learners supporting each other on this lifelong path. Thank you for your time and your attention.